Yeah, my name is Biggs. I am a center-right libertarian. I kind of consider myself a practical libertarian. I don't think any ideology just completely one way is going to work. You need kind of a combination of things like that. I stream on Twitch at Biggs8500, and you can also find me on Twitter and YouTube at Biggs8500.
Thanks, Biggs. Drew.
Hey, I'm Drew. I'm working on my master's in clinical mental health counseling. My area of study is psychology and counseling and stuff like that. I've got a degree in psychology, minored in philosophy. I like talking to people about contentious stuff. I'm center right. I try to present a non-insane version of the right, which is getting harder and harder sometimes these days. So we'll see what
What's
happens.
up?
And I'm looking forward
What's
to the
up, Looter?
Oh, yeah.
How was my
All
volume?
right.
Is it
Sparky.
good?
Hi, everyone. I'm Aircraft Sparky. I am a nationalist conservative and a combat veteran, both the Army and the Air Force. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and 1 in Kosovo. Man, I look at everything through the center of just the average everyday Joe, and just try to interpret things through that. Of course, I do look at subjects and read up on them because I don't know everything. I fix airplanes for a living, for Christ's sakes. But you can find me at twitch.tv/aircraftsparky, and of course youtube.com/aircraftsparky. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Excited to talk to these wonderful guests you have, Hans.
Yeah,
Glad to have you,
Clemson
Sparky.
and Georgia, right?
All right. And everyone, if you want to link any of your stuff, I don't have a bot because I'm a boomer in terms of tech. So if you want to link anything that in my chat or anything like that, you're free to do that during your intros and stuff. So Sansol.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sansol. I'm the premier Valve streamer on Twitch. I do all the speedruns of Valve games. I'm the top of my class, and that's all I know. I don't know anything about politics. I'm just here for the memes.
Thank you, Sansol. IRI.
All right, Hans, thanks for having me back. I'm excited to chat with my fellow Americans about these contentious issues. Should be a lot of fun. I talk politics on my stream with a focus on Capitol Hill, what's going on in the House, the Senate. We watch a lot of C-SPAN. So we'd love to have you if you want to learn about how your government works. And this should be a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you so much for being here with us. And our almost lawyer of the evening, Pisco. Go ahead.
How you doing? I'm Pisco. I'm a JD holder, but not yet a bar certified attorney. I've taken the bar. New York is telling us they're going to have our results in by December. Hopefully it's a little sooner, and I'm sure to let you guys all know when and if I pass and when and if I don't. I'm very anxious to get the results back because I'm worried that everything I've said on Twitch will be cast aside if I don't pass the bar. But if you want to follow my channel, I'm pretty left wing, and I deal usually with legality and criminality, those kind of aspects of whatever is going on in the news or in the Twitch debate circles. Pisco95 is my channel.
Thank you so much, Pisco. And hey, everybody. I'm Hans Varkir. This is my panel. I host one every Saturday from 8 to 10 EST. I gather an excellent collage of guests, normally split ideologically, or at least on 2 sides of different issues. We have 3 conservatives tonight. We have 3 lefties or liberals. And I'm really excited to have this panel. When I'm not hosting panels, I do news and politics research stuff.
Hope my sound is good. Am I coming in okay?
Without further ado, thanks all of our guests for being here. We are going to be talking
check 1 2
tonight about
check
2
1 2
Supreme Court cases and decisions. The Eviction Moratorium, which happened, I believe, 2 weeks ago,
cool.
Last week.
Thank you.
And the ruling on the Texas abortion law. We're probably going to spend about an hour on either of them. We're going to start with the Eviction Moratorium, and then we're going to finish with the abortion law. So, for people that have never been on my panels, I'm pretty sure in this case that is Drew and Sparky. I'm pretty sure Pisco's been here. Yep. And this is for the audience as well. My style of moderation is slightly different than other Twitch panels. So here is the discussion format. Intros and outros. Every person gets a 1-minute uninterrupted opening and closing for each topic. After that, we'll use a hand-raising system. Once the last person is giving their opening statement, you can start raising your hands, and I will put your name down on a list. And we will go down the list throughout the evening, crossing off names as we go, and we will go in that particular order. Gish galloping is bad and really stupid, and it makes conversations impossible when we have 6 people. So limit your speaking time to less than 2 minutes. I will give you a signal at 30 seconds, this little cue card right here, that you have 30 seconds left. And then I will give you another signal with this cue card that you have 10 seconds left. And then at 2 minutes, I'll tell you to finish your sentence. And if you keep going, I'm just going to cut you off or mute you or yell at you, whatever I feel like doing.
Production quality's gone up with those cue cards there, sir.
I know, and because like people were complaining when I did this, they thought I was calling guests crazy, so I had to change. So interruptions sometimes. If you have a specific question or contention about a point someone just made, please don't interrupt them while they're talking. But afterwards, like while I'm throwing it to the next person on the list, just say quick response. Ask them the question, let them respond, and then we can keep going. Don't sit on a question for 10 minutes while the conversation flows and evolves, and then say, hey, I had a question for Biggs that I wanted him to answer 10 minutes ago, and then you have to drag the entire conversation back. It'll make the conversation worse for all of us. So please, if you have a question, ask it like as soon as you can, just so we can keep the conversation flowing. Called out. If someone directly addresses you, if someone says Sansol made a dumb point, he is allowed to immediately respond after that person has finished talking, regardless of where he is on the list. And if you have a question for somebody, you can raise your hand to ask another person a question about something that they said or anything like that. And you can have a small back and forth between just the two of you for about 4 to 5 minutes. If I start seeing it go off the rails or start like devolving into something else, I'll pull it back to the list. I'm only moderating this conversation, so conservatives have no fear. As a lefty, I'm not going to be participating. I'm not going to be shouting you down so I can say my thoughts on this. It's just not how I run these things. So does everyone understand the rules of the discussion?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So our first topic, the eviction moratorium. The Supreme Court recently struck down the Biden administration's executive eviction moratorium. Was this this is a two-part question. Was this a good or bad thing outside of the legal lens? And then was this a justified decision in the legal sense? So we're going to start, in this case, on the bottom right with Pisco. We're going to go from Pisco to Sparky to IRI to Drew to Sansol and then to Biggs. And then for the closing statements, we're going to go in the opposite direction, because if Pisco gets the first word on this and everyone gets to respond to him, he gets the last word so he can respond to everybody else. So with that in mind, 1 minute on the clock. Pisco, take it away, buddy.
The first question you asked was a policy question. Essentially, is it a good thing to have an eviction moratorium in this country at this time? I think without doubt, the question is yes. Our health and public officials have determined that people who are evicted are more prone and more likely to spread the virus. And sort of in furtherance of that understanding and that acknowledgement from public health officials, they instituted actually many series of these eviction moratoriums, one under congressional authority, actually 2 times, and different flavors of this executive order, now under the CDC's guidance and authority. Whether or not this decision was like sort of rightly decided on the merits has to do with your reading of statutory interpretation with respect to CDC's kind of authorizing statute. On the whole, I think that the order was unjustified, given the fact that there's a great public health risk. The balance of equities in granting or in lifting the stay that was in place by the district court, I think, was in favor of the public health and of the government. And really, there was a big question about the statutory interpretation problem with the authorizing statute that ought to be resolved by the lower courts and have full briefing on those issues that came up through the lower courts. And so I think it's good on policy to keep the eviction moratorium, and the court case, or sorry, the opinion that was revoking it was wrong.
Thank you, Pisco. I didn't want to cut him off as part of the opening statement, so I'm going to give everyone else a little bit extra time as he also took it. So everyone now gets 80 seconds for their opening statement. Please don't go over that because Pisco set the tone for this. I want everyone to be able to follow that. So, Sparky, 80 seconds on the clock, buddy. Go ahead.
As far as policy goes, when I look at this, I'm a little conflicted because honestly, look, no one really wants anyone to suffer. No one really wants people to go homeless. However, when it comes down to who are landlords, the majority of landlords are small business owners, usually with only one property or maybe 2, and they are still paying mortgages on it. They still had to make bills. So I understand with the struggle that is going on during the COVID pandemic, people are a little short on money. We'll dive into that a little bit deeper. But as far as when it comes down to the law, the executive branch overstepped their boundaries. They had no constitutional authority to go that direction. So going by that alone, I find it to be perfectly fine that the Supreme Court struck it down. And then they said It is up to Congress to tackle this.
Thank you so much, Sparky. IRI.
Yeah, I mean, I find that kind of interesting that Sparky said that, because the Trump administration was the first one to enact a eviction moratorium under the CDC. So I guess you're saying that the Trump administration made a big boo-boo there. I am disappointed that the revised moratorium did not stand. I was impressed with the Biden administration's creativity in reworking the moratorium. This time it only covered about 20% of the counties that were covered last time. And there were also requirements that you had to attest that you couldn't find another place to live, that you were financially unable to pay your rent. And on top of that, Congress has allocated $50 billion, more than double what's needed to make up past rent up to a year for people, plus a couple months more in utilities. So there's every incentive to keep people in their places. But what we're seeing is greed on display. This is landlords seeing a hot rental market and wanting to boot out as many people as they can. And honestly, times like this make me question my status as a sock dem. I have faith in the system, but this is a pretty gross result to come from it.
Thank you, IRI. Drew.
Yeah, so non-legal side of the situation, I think that the moratorium, if I'm not missing something, seems sort of like a strange policy. I think that we need to do something to address evictions, but I'm not sure that an eviction moratorium in this shape or form, unless I'm missing something, makes a lot of sense. Like, I think providing some sort of economic incentive for people to not be evicted, like providing some sort of incentive to landlords, makes a lot of sense, rather than just saying you can't evict people. If that's already going on, then that's cool. I'm not aware if that's going on. On the legal side, I'm not, like I said, like I'm going to say a bunch of times, I'm not a legal expert. But reading through, I was sort of surprised by some of the language, like, for example, a quote, careful review of the record makes it clear that the applicants are virtually certain to succeed on the merits of their argument that the CDC has exceeded its authority. It seems like the authority they were trying to use for this, just based on reading the decision, was that they have some sort of authority to do things like fumigate and exterminate pests. And I don't know what that has to do with imposing broad-scale economic policy. So to me, I think I would have liked a better crafted policy, and just based on my reading, it doesn't seem like they had the authority to do this. That's just my reading.
Thank you, Drew. Sansel.
Yeah, so I did a
Interesting
little
take
bit of
so far.
research on this before I started today, and it seems like even the Biden administration didn't think that this is going to stand once it went to the Supreme Court. It seems like after the last eviction
Thanks, baby.
moratorium ended,
Can I be that chicken
which was
who
upheld
just
by
be careful.
the Supreme Court, the last one, Kavanaugh said that he wouldn't support another one without Congress's approval, and that he was only approving that one
Love you, babe.
because of the circumstances relating
I'm
to
talking to
the
some people, okay?
coronavirus.
I say hi.
But the
No, people are talking, so you gotta go, okay,
CDC
babe?
doing
Love
it
you.
again was one step too far, and the Biden administration was really just trying to buy enough time for more of the funds that they had allocated for renters assistance to go out. So I don't even think that the Biden administration really expected this to stand. I think they were just trying to buy enough time for people to get the money that was already allocated that was sluggish going through all the bureaucracy. So I think that they probably should have upheld it and allowed people to more time to get that money, because it was supposed to expire on October 3rd. It was only supposed to last a couple more weeks. I don't think that it was appropriate for them to overturn it in this case. And that's my opinion on it.
Thank you, Sansel. And then everyone in chat, for learning purposes, and for you, just like to make this more educational, I'm linking the Supreme Court decision so that all of you in chat are welcome to read it as
Yay.
well, so you can help follow along in case someone's citing or reading something specific, if you want to help make up your own minds on this issue. And so, Biggs is the last person for his opening statement, so everyone's welcome to start raising their hands as soon as he starts going. Biggs, final opening statement before we move to about 37 minutes of general discussion.
Perfect.
Go ahead, buddy.
All right, so you just love doling out homework, don't you, bud? Anyway, so from a just a general standpoint, I think that the eviction moratorium was bad, even if it was whether it was instituted by the CDC or if it was actually a law by Congress. I just think it's just a bad, egregious overstep of just the right to property in general. As far as the legality of the Supreme Court not allowing it to stand. I think they did the right thing here. Not only did they tell them the first time that, hey, this isn't going to fly, Biden then tried to do some, finagling to change it just enough to make it so he could push it through again, and then they basically slapped it down right away. So I think that it's just bad for everybody involved. It actually is making the problem worse, because I don't think it's necessarily what like IRI said about just landlords wanting to kick people out of places. But I think that if we would have had this just be like a normal everyday thing, we would have a lot less people being evicted at once. And now we're seeing a massive influx of people being kicked out all at one time, and that's causing even more damage. So I think that they should have never had it to start with. But if they were going to do it, they should have done some kind of like a tiered system where they like slowly like tapered it off or something like that, to make it more of a less of a strain on everybody involved. But again, I think it was just bad from the get-go, and I'm glad the Supreme Court shut that down.
Thank you, Biggs. So we'll now move into 37 minutes of open discussion. Starting right now, the list is IRI and then Pisco. Anyone else, feel free to start raising your hands as we are going. I'm IRI, take it away.
Yeah, Drew, you had mentioned concerns with using this Public Health Service Act to kick people out, thinking it's an overextension. You were referring to the Supreme Court opinion there. But in general, it's accepted that you can quarantine people using this same law. So if you can quarantine people, it seems that you should have the authority to be able to prevent people from being kicked out too.
I'm sort of confused why you're getting. How do you think that just because you can quarantine people, that grants you the authority to do the other side of that? That doesn't seem to follow for me.
Well, what is the end result of quarantining people? It's to keep them there from spreading disease. So if people are being kicked out, they're going to go live with other people and spread disease in multiple households or in shelters. So the end goal is the same. That's why I think if you look at it from that perspective, then the tools, what does it matter?
I just think my concern, number one, I'm sort of referring to what the decision said about fumigation and extermination for pests, rather than like wide scale like economic policy, which is essentially what this is. It's sort of like I guess you got the additional coronavirus concerns. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's possible that they have sort of maybe some like way to justify this. Just when I was reading from the decision, it seemed like the likelihood of that holding up in court was not high, given and that was just straight from the report that I read. So I trust their judgment on it. It seemed like the people that were arguing they didn't have the authority had a pretty strong case. I haven't read through their case entirely. I'm just referring to the document that said that they do have a strong case and are likely to succeed.
Thank you, IRI. Thank you, Drew. Right now, we're going to go to Pisco, then Sparky, and then Biggs. So, Pisco, go ahead.
Well, Drew, of course, that's the majority opinion. There's a dissenting opinion, and I think reasonable minds can differ, and in fact do differ on what's going on here. Where do you get the authority to do this wide economic regulations, you might ask? Congress enacted a statute that says to make and enforce such regulations as are in its judgment necessary to prevent the introduction, transmission, or spread of communicable diseases. It can do a whole host of things, including other measures as in their judgment may be necessary. That's a pretty broad delegation of authority by Congress. And the majority opinion itself, this is more to Biggs's point, stated that it's unquestionable that if Congress had decided to explicitly make an eviction moratorium, there'd be no question of its constitutionality. What we're dealing with right now is statutory interpretation, and whether or not we should deal with that very broad delegation of authority to the CDC, to the Surgeon General, and then the Surgeon General to the CDC, as broad as it looks, or using some canons of construction, narrowing it down. And I think whatever your opinion is on that, the lower court should have time to figure it out and to give full briefs on the merits. And the fact that we would vacate this stay in a period of legal uncertainty where circuits are split below on the statutory interpretation question, and when this pandemic is ravaging and killing thousands of people, I think seems ridiculous.
Drew and Biggs, you're both welcome to respond before we throw to Sparky.
Yeah, I think the most illuminating part on this particular concern was, I believe there was a section, I can't remember if it was something that I read in the decision or if it was an article about the decision, about a bunch of different things that would, if we take the interpretation, the very broad interpretation of the CDC powers, they could impose all sorts of really crazy restrictions in terms of, like, I think one of the examples was like, should these CDC be allowed to mandate that the government like buys you like laptops, things like that to keep you in your home and stuff like that. So I think like you're saying, there's sort of like this interesting question about like how much authority do they truly have. I actually don't really know the answer to that question. It seems to me like, and this is just my intuition speaking, that there has to be some sort of reining back, because if we take the broad interpretation, they're just given way too much leniency with what they can do, and I'm not really comfortable with an organization.
If it's
like
a problem, it's a problem of Congress's own making by broadly delegating to the Surgeon General. And what's more, the limiting principle that you're looking for is the presence and the need to prevent the introduction, transmission, or spread of communicable diseases. If anyone here denies that that's what's going on right now, then I think that you have a limiting principle right there, that there has to be the presence of such a disease. And what's more is, just because you can do something.
Hello, Amanda Smash. How are you? Oh, thank you so much for the follow.
There isn't some individual right that's still at stake. We
Hope
can't
you're doing
just
well.
steal people's property willy nilly.
Yes.
That raises like a takings problem. And so no one denies that the people who are being prevented from being evicted, they still have to pay their rent, and that hasn't gone away.
Yeah, that's true, and that's what, from what I was reading, that is correct. I think my primary concern with all this, and I'll let Biggs go and stuff like that, is really on the policy side. I really would have preferred to see like a policy that like more stringently or surgically addresses the eviction issue than this, because I'm a little bit concerned about what happens on the landlord side of this, because I'm actually not aware of what sort of relief they're actually being able to be granted during this time because of this moratorium. But it's possible that one of y'all has information about that. But I'll go ahead and let it go so Biggs can talk a little bit as well.
Yeah, thank you. So to kind of address Pisco's point, like I agree with you. Like it is just people basically interpreting how this verbiage of the what authority the CDC has. But to my understanding, and again, you're more of a legal expert than probably any of us here. It was my understanding that most of the time when it comes to laws, they try to hold it to whatever the actual like specifics are. And then that's what's actually like designated for like what the law does, and the more generalities give it like to the interpretation. Now my issue is like, this is like Drew said, like there's so much more wide sweeping things that could be brought up under this, and it's kind of like, where do you draw the line? But I still kind of I still believe, and again, this is just like my personal, whatever, but I still don't think that taking over somebody's property, basically seizing somebody's property, just seems wrong to me. And I know it is for the better good, and I would like to do that. Like as a good person, I would be for that. But like, I think that doing it in the law is just a bad precedent, and it opens up the door to many other things where the government can overstep these lines and then seize more and more and more, right? And then to kind of address what I said earlier, when you brought up about the quarantine and stuff like that, with the ability for the CDC to quarantine people.
Wait, Biggs, 1 second. You are right after Sparky, so I only want you to speak specifically responding to Pisco's point.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem at all. You're on the list right after Sparky.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
Pisco, 20 seconds to like last word on that before we throw it to Sparky.
No, I think it's I'm not convinced by the rebuttals. The question of if this pandemic were such that this was a bubonic plague and it really was 80% lethality, none of you would be denying, I think, the authority of the CDC to do this. It just so happens that I think people are downplaying the severity of the crisis, and that's what the sticking point is.
Right, thank you, Pisco. Right now the list is going to be Sparky, Biggs, Sansol, IRI, and Pisco. So we might like move things around a little bit, so it goes like con lib, because right now we have 2 conservatives and 3 liberals, and I just want to make sure that people can like adequately be like pushing back and not just having say like 4 minutes and then 6 minutes of just like uninterrupted speaking time. So we're gonna modify it a little bit, so it's gonna go Sparky, then Sansol, then Biggs, then IRI, and then Pisco. So Sparky, go ahead.
IRI brought up the idea of quarantine, which that is an interesting direction you want to go, because quarantine, you actually quarantine the sick to protect them from the healthy public. In this case, the lockdowns was not a quarantine. This was actually a lockdown, holding healthy people at bay from a potential of getting sick. The CDC may quarantine individuals or small groups that are infected, but they cannot just quarantine healthy people. And that's one thing that yes, it is written very broadly. Pisco is exactly right in that point. I think it was written that way on a more commonsensical type approach. And of course, just like we've seen when things are not spelled out precisely, they'll get abused. I do believe this was an overstep by the CDC.
That is very true,
And
Looter.
Joe Biden knew. He actually, when
I
he
might use
announced he
that
was going to
idea.
do this, he knew that it would not stay. He actually mentioned that it was going to get overturned. He willfully and knowingly broke the law by instructing the CDC, in my opinion. Of course, I'm no legal scholar.
IRI, would you like to briefly respond before we throw it to Sansol?
Yeah, I'll just say, Big said, I think Big said, where do we draw the line? And I would say we've got it here. It's, we're not trying to
Yeah,
buy
they canceled it.
laptops for people and stuff like that. We're just trying to prevent people from getting kicked out. And there's about 750,000 people that are going to be impacted by this. It's not that they're just going to be homeless. These people are going to crowd into other spaces. These people are going to go into shelters, and that is going to keep spreading the virus. And this pandemic is just going to be extended that much longer. So the extended moratorium that Biden had would to go through October 3rd. So it wasn't indefinite, and I think that would have bought us enough time to get out that money that was allocated from Congress, billions of dollars that was starting to move now. They were starting to get it
I have
out
a quick
there.
rebuttal
So,
here?
Go ahead. And then for the purpose of information for the panel and the chat, I believe at this point in time, of the 46 billion allocated for the rental relief effort, about 5 billion has made its way to people.
When was that actually passed? So that was one thing that I'm having a little issues finding.
that was part of the American Rescue Plan.
Okay, and that was passed when?
I don't know, what,
I
January?
believe back in
February?
May. Or
Okay.
I'm sorry, am I thinking the wrong thing? Sorry.
You could be. I don't know. I'm guessing.
I'm asking because if it's been longer than 3 months ago, which
Mhm.
I imagine it has been, I don't believe a couple more weeks it would have gotten distributed any better. Only because the bureaucracies run slowly, horribly slowly, and they are very bad at giving out money. But they are great at taking it and spending it on their pet projects.
Thank you.
Or
Smart.
maybe there's just not enough people redeeming it because there's not enough people who are breaking their rent. Maybe that's the interpretation, the intuition. But they're not breaking their lease and they're not in default.
Well,
If-
and I know, like, my own personal renters.
So
they
he's
are not
arguing
breaking
against
their lease
himself
at all.
there.
In fact, they have been wonderful, and I even, dropped down some of the profit a little bit just because, hey, I understand times are hard, and trying to be, empathetic to my renters and stuff. However, there's still the point that the landowners themselves, the landlords, they have bills to pay as well. It is never going to be purely 100% profit on rent. So it's just one of those things. It's a give and take situation.
Yeah, what I was going to say, I'm next, right?
You're next. Again, just providing more information for the panel and for the audience.
Mhm.
Part of the primary reason given as to why most of the money hasn't yet been allocated is there's some difficulty in trickling through the state and local apparatus, to get the money to the people, because it's going through different municipalities and stuff like that. But 2 minutes on the clock. Go ahead, Sansol, and then Biggs.
Yeah, so all I was going to say, it actually addresses what Sparky was saying there. One of the reasons that I'm particularly not super happy with this is the fact that this decision helps landlords and hurts renters, but the decision before had in it funds for landlords to get relief as well, right? So
you
it
are
was
correct. You are correct there. The deal
yeah.
is
So
the same
why would
process
we?
that the renters are going through. If they I don't know if any renters have really filed for it. With people who I know, I don't know of any renters that might have or may not have filed. But I do know that the small businesses here locally in Oklahoma, when they were filing for their PPP, their payment protection stuff, Oklahoma was notoriously slow with actually getting out that money, and that is something that needs to be addressed.
Well, that's the thing, that this moratorium that was supposed to last until October 3rd, it was a 2-month extra moratorium, was supposed to allow for time for more of those funds to be allocated. And those funds were not just for renters, they were for landlords as well. But it seems like we've fucked over the renters in this situation.
True,
when
Looter,
both
true.
parties could have been helped. Now we're just helping one party at the expense of the other one, which is why it's so bad, right? Because we could be helping everybody, but because of this decision, only one group is helped, and it's the group that in most cases is probably going to be better off in terms of their finances than the other group.
Sparky, last word, and then we're going to throw it to Biggs, who's been waiting very patiently.
Yes. So when it comes to the party that's going to be more likely less harmed because they has more money, the majority of people who actually own land that are landlords, like I said, they are still paying bills, are still paying mortgages. For people who own multiplexes and stuff, such as apartments, they'll buy an apartment for $1.5 million and then rent each individual one out for, $600 to $800, depending on, the size or whatever, the square footage. But if you have a bunch of tenants that aren't able to pay, their mortgages don't go away. And not all landlords actually were, just like with the revised tenant deal for the renters, not everyone actually qualifies because you have to meet a certain income threshold and things like that. So I understand the concern for the renters and
Sparky
everything,
keeps
especially
stealing all
here
my
during
takes.
the pandemic times. But consideration has to go towards the landowners themselves as well, because this could be a more expansive land grab for the government.
Really
Right.
quick, I want to say one very, very quick thing.
Okay, yeah,
Once
it's okay.
again, once again, the two groups here, renters and landlords, have different abilities to maintain their assets, right? So renters are generally going to be poorer than landlords. This is just I hate to say common sense, but it's common sense that people that own the houses and extract money from those people are going to have more money than those other ones, right? Than the renters. So the fact that we're going to like boo-hoo over the landlords and not the renters, when both of those groups could have been helped at the same time with the previous policy, but now that's been overturned, only the group that already had the funds at their disposal, statistically speaking, right? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Anyways, go ahead.
I hear you. I would argue that usually the difference between an owner and a renter is usually a credit score, not necessarily money on hand and wealth. And to follow up with the extracting money from, you're extracting actual real estate from the owner. So it goes both ways.
I got you. Thank you, Sparky. We're going to throw it to Biggs, and then IRI, then Pisco, and then Drew. All right. Right now, we have about 18 minutes left in this discussion. If we have, like, say, 5 minutes left and people want to keep talking about this, we were welcome to extend this topic longer. I know they tried to keep these to about 2 hours, but if y'all want to go like longer than that, that's totally fine with me. So we're now going to throw it to Biggs. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, so one of the biggest issues with this whole the whole start of with this moratorium thing was that they made it so that the renters themselves had to be the ones that had to apply for this funding or whatever. And if you have people that aren't planning on paying their rent and stuff like that, why would you think they're going to fill out these paperworks for the landlord? They already, like, if they're not going to pay their bills, what makes you think they're going to do that? I mean, again, that's just my assumptions. Again, that may be false, but that just seems kind of like, well, they're not doing the right thing or whatever, so maybe they shouldn't do it. I think a lot of these people, at least from where I'm at and where I live, most things were able to continue on. So I really worry about the people that kind of took advantage of this and are going to be left with all this back rent and stuff like that. And I hope that's not the case. And I hope people were responsible and being able to either pay the rent when they had the amount to do it. And if they were hurting, they could get help by this. And I hope they took the time to fill out that stuff. But the bigger issue here is you have this unelected body making these policy decisions with no real oversight other than like these court, injunctions and things like that. So that's part of the issue. And two, if the CDC is granted this authority, it effectively opens up a whole nother can of worms to like partisan politics and getting people put into these places to make these decisions from an unaccountable body. So I think that's another thing we have to consider here too. But I do think that the biggest issue is like we need to get people help if we can. But like Sparky said, he kind of stole my thing before with IRI said about like, they just need more time. Well, they already said that once. Like you already used that excuse once. So like it just kind of, it doesn't follow. And like Hanz said, it was only like $5 billion out of the 40 billion or something like that. So we're talking about less than like 15% or less of what the money has actually been allocated and actually put out there. So it's really not going to solve anything by kicking it down the road a few more weeks or even a couple months. Like I said at the beginning, I think this is just a poor policy to begin with, whether it was even instituted by Congress or not. I just don't think people should be forced to forfeit their private property. And I think that if they want to do it and take care of these programs, they should have the option to do that. But if not, the government shouldn't force them to do that.
Quick
Thank you.
response. Just a quick response. A lot of nonsense there. The thing I want to address, though, most focally is this notion that if people are able to fill out forms, then they should be able to get a job. That's just ridiculous. We have unemployment for a reason, because the conditions for filling out forms might not mirror perfectly the conditions for finding a job.
That's not what I said at all,
elaborate
but
on
that's
that.
fine.
Okay. Well, then talk more about why it befuddles you that these people who are able, you think that there's not going to be a lot of people able to fill out the forms, and how that relates.
Well,
to
are
your
they filling out the
notion of
forms?
jobs.
Because it
It
seems like they're
appears that
not.
a lot of them are. A lot of
Feels
them
like
are
a lot of them
affected.
aren't. That's the issue. If
What's
there's
your evidence for that?
there's literally
there's
hundreds of thousands of people, and they should have this they should have this paperwork through, and the money should be getting distributed. You said it's such a low percentage. Like, even if it is slow because of the municipalities, they should still at least be able to say, hey, this money's on the way.
You're conflating, I'm sorry to say, the money allocated by Congress to landowners and the people who are receiving rents from the people who are filling out forms to have to be stopped from being evicted. Those are two different issues. And you suggested that somehow the not writing out of that you expected a lot of people not to write out those applications when they really need relief from eviction. And I wanted you to talk more about that.
Biggs, I'll give you an extra 45 seconds just to respond to Pisco's point, and then we're throwing it to IRI.
Yeah, so I think that I've seen it in just the last week. I have some friends that are landlords. They literally had people that ruin their houses. So these aren't people that are going to actually take the time to fill out their forms. I know that's anecdotal, but I do foresee this happening to a lot of people. When people get evicted, they're going to be pissed. So why would they have any reasonable need or want to help out the landlords by getting the money either to them to pay the landlords or whatever? You said I was conflating, but I just think it's kind of ridiculous to think that these people that are going to be pissed that will actually take the time to fill out these papers, and I hope they do, and I really hope that you're right and I'm wrong, but I just worry that that's not going to be the case. And again, I'm assuming things, and I understand that, but just when you look at how people are in reality, that's how people treat other people, especially when they're upset about something.
Thank you, Biggs. We're going to go to IRI, then Pisco, and then Drew. So IRI, go ahead.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just want to say that the American Rescue Plan was passed in March. I looked it up here, so we know how much time has passed. But I think, Biggs, what's happening is we're getting focused on a few bad cases. This is kind of like the welfare queen argument, where the vast majority of people are doing the right thing, and you're going to hear about some cases of bad people, but we can't get caught up in that. There's always going to be people that ruin it, but we just got to accept that and move on. I want to ask Sparky, wouldn't you rather get the back 12 months of rent that you are owed by allowing your tenants to go through the process? I understand the forms are a bit complicated, and it's a little weird that the tenant has to apply for it and the landlord's kind of helpless if the tenant doesn't do anything. But I believe that most people have at least a working relationship with their landlord, especially during the pandemic. If they were behind on rent, they were probably in communication with the landlord. And now that this program exists, that you can be made whole, wouldn't you rather get that if it can be distributed by October 3rd? Because there's hundreds of thousands of applications in now, and they actually have made the process easier. They simplified it. They made it so you can save the form. Before you couldn't save it, and there were 20 forms you had to fill out online. It was a big mess. So I think the ball is starting to roll now, and I'm just like, why wouldn't landlords want to be made whole for a year's worth of rent just to kick somebody out in a few months? Because it's going to take time to kick people out.
Well, when it comes down to it, during this entire time, landlords still had to do upkeep and maintenance on those properties, as well as pay their mortgage, which they can apply for some relief there, but they still have to keep up things like their property taxes for their local taxes. It is what it is. Plus insurances. Just to let you know, being a landlord is not simply, oh, I has land, IR rent, IR just pay this one bill. No, landlords pay tons of different bills. And just like a renter may have to cover things like utilities and whatnot, landlords have insurances, they have maintenance fees, they have upkeep fees, they have all kinds of things that they have to pay. So this is a two-way street. And when it comes down to it, you said it passed in May. Well, Mazel Tov. Now 5 months have passed, and only 5% of the 40 or 5 billion of the $45 billion has made it out. Well, yes, I'm glad they have streamlined that process. The whole idea of getting rent once a year, no, landlords do not want that, because just like most people, many landlords, they don't have this huge nest egg that they can just fall back on. In fact, there are many landlords that are saying that they have to sell their personal properties now because they're getting ready to get them taken away by the government themselves, by their state governments, because they're not able to maintain their taxes and stuff. So, I mean, where a renter may lose a roof to sleep under, the owner, the landowner, is actually losing legitimate wealth because of government intervention.
Well, again, I just real quickly, I didn't hear an answer to my question though. Wouldn't you rather get the year's worth of back rent in a month than kick somebody out and have to get a new person? And by that time, you're not going to get any of that rent.
I could write off those losses to destroy someone's credit history to where it'll be even harder for them to
You're
find a
also
house.
assuming that they are going to get it as well.
Yeah, a lot of times.
But
And
why would you do all of that without getting all of the money from the government that is promised to you?
The money does not go from the government to the landlord. The money goes to the renter.
Oh, it
And
does.
Some of it does, yes. There's some of it.
There's
to
different
landlords.
programs. That is correct. Yes, there's different.
From what I understood, it went to the renter and then to the landlord. And if I'm wrong there, hey, that's bad on me.
My understanding is it all goes to the landlord, but the renter has to apply for him.
If someone could find, if someone on the panel wants to do like a little bit of research for that while they're not like talking at some point, just to get some clarification on that, that would be awesome. We are now going to throw it to Pisco, then Drew, and then Biggs. Go ahead, Pisco.
Yeah, since the focus of this conversation has been the Supreme Court, I want to take a moment to discuss what I am worried about in terms of hypocrisy with respect to how the court is interpreting executive actions. And I find it a little bit rich being lectured to by Republicans and maybe Trump fans about abuse of executive authority. The court goes and interprets, for instance, Trump's suspension power under our immigration laws to be absolutely maximalist, even though we have this entire statutory scheme to deal with threats from other countries. He can just suspend all classes of people that he wants, including Muslims, from coming into this country, or sorry, from Muslim majority countries from coming into this country. And we're going to interpret that statute to the absolute maximum we can do. Similarly, the majority points to Congress not acting to extend the moratorium as evidence that somehow the CDC can't do that. I point to Trump's, the specific non-passage by Congress of the border wall, and then Trump's subsequent going ahead and paying for it anyway. And so I think that there's a lot of problems here, and it seems outcome-oriented, the majority's approach towards interpreting executive officials. Here we have the authority of executive officials, indeed of agencies. One other response to Big specifically, who says is a quote-unquote unelected body. That's all of our agencies, brother. And our agencies are ultimately answerable to the president. The president has the power to remove officials, pretty wide authority to remove officials, as we've seen in recent case law.
That's why I said partisan about that, by the way.
And there's no problem there. And there wasn't a problem there when Trump's agencies were doing ridiculous things, unprecedented things before. And now when the Biden administration is enacting reasonable regulation, that's totally, reasonable minds could think that is totally allowable under the broad delegation of authority. Now all of a sudden we have a problem with executive overreach. Now the courts are defining and measuring the extent of the power, which seems pretty capacious, where in other cases, such as the suspension power, we're going to interpret it in the most wide possible sense. I think there's an inconsistency both in terms of the court's approach and commentators on this platform.
That is brilliant, because I got to throw this out to you. There's 3 different branches of government. We learned this in civics class. Each one has different scopes, responsibilities. When it comes down to spending money, it comes down to what? The legislative branch, right? When it comes to things like securing our
why did Trump spend on a border wall? Why did Trump spend on a border wall?
Because he redirected defense money. He redistributed defense money towards another security measure for our country. See, he at least stayed within the breadth of his authority by using the defense method. When it comes down to it, Biden.
It doesn't sound like the power of the purse. He can just take money from one place, put it somewhere else. Who cares if it's defense? If it relates to transportation, probably too. Take money from transportation. Who cares? What does the power of the purse really mean?
Department of Defense a border wall for
1 second, Sparky. Let's continue for another 2 minutes. But just again, please. Sparky, remember, if after someone's done talking and you're not next on the list, just a quick response so everyone understands.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's totally fine. And then just please, if you're doing a back and forth with somebody, please just try to be somewhat respectful and not immediately interrupting and talking over each other. No, this that wasn't for Sparky. That was for everybody.
It was for me too.
Yeah, everyone was getting a little aggressive, and we just want to make sure that we can actually have the conversation that we want to have. So I'll give this another 2 minutes for you and Pisco to hash this out, and then we're going to throw it to Drew, then Biggs, and then Sparky. So
Super quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I threw something in the group call that says that landlords can apply for assistance. It's .gov. So.
All right.
Thank you, Pisco.
Thank you. That was Sansel, but thank you, Sansel.
Sorry, Sansel. Sorry.
No worries.
no,
No worries. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
When it comes down to it, Pisco, the reason, and I'm not even like I voted for Trump. That don't mean I think everything he did was freaking gold or like he walked on water. What I'm saying is he stayed within his breadth of scope when it comes down to the three different branches of government. What is going on right here? The reason why the Supreme Court kicked this out, and you know this, Sansel, is because they said before this needs to be hashed out in Congress because this is more of a budgetary item. And they went ahead.
No, they didn't say that. They said this was their interpretation of the statute, and that their interpretation of the statute was limited executive power. That this broad delegation, that I think by any clear reading, it is a broad delegation of authority, is limited by our reading of the specific headers below, even though there's a catch-all term at the end of the specific headers saying other, uses of the power. And that's how they justified this decision. That's one of the grounds. And it seems like the court and other people are willing to interpret the powers of the executive agencies extremely broadly when it politically suits them. But when all of a sudden, we're doing something against landlords, now we have to, read very narrowly these broad delegations by Congress. It's Congress itself which. Though. Really, then what is it? What distinguishes it?
Okay, like Sansel, 5 words, and then we're giving Sparky 30 seconds to finish this topic, and then we're going to throw it to Drew. So Sansel, 5 words. I'm counting.
Oh fuck. I can't put it in 5 words. It's very short. Kavanaugh,
That's it. It's done. No.
Kavanaugh supported the last one, but not this one. It's not. There's obviously some amount of wiggle room in how they interpret it, depending on the specific case that's going on. So obviously they could have done the same thing for this one, but they didn't.
All right,
Kavanaugh did not support the original one. In fact, Kavanaugh said, "I'm just going to let this slide. If
Do
you
it
try
for
again,
you.
I'm going to slap
You're my boy,
it down."
Blue.
When it
You're my
comes down to
boy.
it,
So they have some amount
my
of wiggle
boys.
room
My
to
well,
homies.
he
for
used judicial
interpretation.
Come on,
discretion. and
homies.
Pisco could probably
Yeah.
break that down much better than me. But since it was only going to be like a week or two before it expired, he
I'm
said
gonna
just let it
bunk
go.
Sansel
That
right
way,
now.
there's not that hard chop there at the end. He did it. He was being a
I do
little
it for the
merciful. I
boys.
It
guess.
wasn't on the merits. It wasn't on the merits.
Do it for
So,
the boys.
when it comes down to it, they were warned. Don't do this again. We'll slap it down immediately. And Biden said, "Hey, watch this." That's really what it boils down to. And look, it's about the scope of responsibility for the different branches of government. And executive branch exceeded their authority grossly in this, where the moratorium on people coming in from different countries.
I want to go,
Not
man.
a Muslim ban,
Sparky.
Pisco, different countries.
I love
because
Sparky.
There's many Muslim
But he's
countries
doing a
where
little
people can
much. A
come.
little bit much.
And when it comes down to the border, that was the good of the nation, the protection of the nation, the general welfare, things like that. It's actually all written down in the
But COVID
Constitution.
regulation is not for the good of the nation.
All right. We'll let that hang. This is a question for all the panel. We only have 2 minutes left of the opening
I wanna keep
conversation. I'm going to ask the panel: would we be comfortable extending this by say about 13 more minutes? We have say 15 more minutes for the general discussion before we move on to closing statements.
This has actually been a great discussion. I would say yes.
So show of hands, everyone good? Simple majority stuff. All right, cool. So we're going to do this for 15 more
Hans,
minutes.
you can be a dictator. You don't have to leave it up to democracy. This is your show, Hans.
Well, I understand, but if people don't want to talk about something, I'm not going to force people to talk about something longer.
I know I'm teasing you, Hans. I love you.
And then listen to me. If you want me to be a dictator, Biggs, I'll do it.
Oh, that was what I was waiting for.
We're gonna go to Drew and then Biggs and then Sparky. I assume they're gonna be asking questions or directly addressing lefties. So we're probably gonna have some back and forth while that's happening. So we're gonna start with Drew, then Biggs, then Sparky, and Pisco. I see you can put your hand down. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to try to do this as fast as possible, but I haven't talked in a while, so I feel like I have to address a lot. Number one, I'm really fucking confused about the rent thing. It seems like if people are on the hook for rents, they'll want to apply to get the rent paid for. I don't understand what's going unless I'm fucking missing something. Also, I wanted to clarify a couple things that Pisco mentioned. I don't know if they were really directed at me or people on the panel, but it was sort of vague. I want to be clear that I think COVID is super serious. I don't make a habit of downplaying COVID. I'm also not a fan of Trump and have been critical of his overreaches in the past. So I've been consistent on this for a long time. And then I've got a couple questions just so I can clarify things. These aren't gotchas. I'm just trying to figure out this position. I'm not really married to my position on this. So I'm curious from the lefties on the panel, if this is really good constitutional stuff, why was Biden I think he said that he thought this was unconstitutional. He was just trying to buy time. So I'm curious to hear what y'all think about that, if he was wrong. I'm also curious to hear if you think that this is clearly constitutional on the merits, or you just like the outcomes associated with pushing this off a little bit for evicting people so that the outcomes are better. So I guess my specific position is, do you feel that your position is based on legal merits, or just the outcomes associated with continuing on? So that's what I'm curious about.
All right. Wait. Okay. So this was for all the lefties. So instead, like, to not have a clusterfuck, which one of you three wants to take this?
Give it to
All right.
Pisco, yeah.
All right,
On
go,
the
Pisco.
issue of whether or not Biden is wrong or right in the constitutional what's going on here, it doesn't really matter. We know in Marbury versus Madison, it's the judicial department that decides what the law is, and Biden could say it's unconstitutional to, or it's constitutional to do whatever he wants. Doesn't mean that it is in fact that. This is a judicial question about statutory interpretation. Ultimately, your question about whether or not things should be legal in this country, of course they should be. I would never be in support of a measure that was illegal, barring some exceptions, Nazi Germany, whatever, an illegal measure to help the people. I think that we should do things generally that are legal. And this isn't a constitutional question, really. It's a statutory interpretation one. No one denies that Congress, if it wanted to, and it has, could have put this explicitly into the law. There's also, by the way, legislative history which suggests that Congress, when it did the second extension, it was with the understanding that they acknowledged CDC's authority to do so through this authorizing statute. And so ultimately, I think the authorizing statute is broad enough to encompass this kind of action. There are limiting principles that would prevent you from just forcing people to give up laptops or free internet and
format
stuff.
that Hans does. So
and I'm happy to get into those.
best not to jump in as
Right,
best
give a
as
quick-
possible.
IRI, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to give a quick answer. I think that Biden had concerns. That's why he revised the moratorium. And this time it only covered 20% of the counties that were included in the first one, just in high spread areas. And also Justice Kavanaugh's ruling was at the end of June, when it looked like we were getting out of this mess. That was before the Delta variant started speeding up.
Drew, did that adequately answer your question?
Yeah, and I just want to clarify. I wasn't trying to imply that y'all don't give a shit about like legal shit or not. When I hear people talk about it, it's like, well, we need to do it for these reasons, and I hear things like, oh, well, it's good, like we need to like wait a little bit. Those aren't like specifically legal reasons. So I was just trying to clarify to make sure we were on the same page. I'm not trying to suggest y'all don't give a shit.
No problem at all. Drew, I think this has been a really good faith conversation so far. I don't think anyone would be accusing you of doing that. So
worth clarifying still. So yeah.
I got you. Everyone, Drew is good faith, we promise. All right, we're gonna throw it now to Biggs, then Sparky, then Pisco, then IRI. Go ahead, Biggs.
Yeah, so thank you. So I looked at that link that Sansol sent, and actually the thing about the landlords is the landlords file first, then it was still on the responsibility of the renter to actually finish the filing. So that does kind of like run in the face of what you mentioned. But overall, I want to get to kind of like to the motive of the people. Like, I agree with Drew, and I agree with all of you. I really hope these people are going to apply for these programs to get the pay, because I think people don't want to ruin their credit for the most part, but you have to look at the actual long-term damages. Like, you can recover from your credit, right? But if you lose like multiple properties, even if it's just small amounts, that's a huge detriment to those people. That can be very bad. Again, I don't want to be like a simp for landlords or anything like that, but I want to make sure we're not just like brushing that under the rug. But what I do want to say is, like, when it comes to people taking advantage of situations, I know somebody brought up like, why do you think people would do this? Just from COVID, since COVID started, and this report was done in January of this year, California actually lost $11 billion in fraud from people taking undeserved unemployment from just California. $11 billion. So people will take when they can take, and I'm assuming, again, I'm going to try to be as best foot forward, that these people needed the money and they did it for the right reasons. But fraud is still fraud, so we have to keep that in mind. Like, people will do some shitty stuff, and I think that you kind of just brush under the rug and you assume things about people. That I try not to think the worst of people, but I want to make sure that everybody's fairly protected. And I think that in this case, the government's overstepping their bounds, and we need to not let these agencies, and again, like Pisco said, all the agencies do have authority, right? But when you're actually legislating, that's when there's a problem. When you're actually making things that have basically policy implications, that's when there's an issue. Those institutions should be more towards like lending advice and guidance to the actual legislative branches, and not just legislating themselves.
Thank you, Biggs. We're now going to throw it to Sparky, then Pisco, then IRI. Go ahead, Sparky.
Actually, look, a lot of things have already been addressed. by both sides. And Pisco's been giving some great discussion on this and some good information. And IRI really has too. Sansel, I haven't heard much from you on this. And honestly, I want to give my time to you for anything you want to say on this subject, sir.
Oh, Sansel, you want to jump in?
Oh,
You're muted.
You're muted, brother.
Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. I read your mails. Pro streamer
Wait, did you
Sansel. I
fall
was
out
muted a
with
second
him?
too.
You fall out? I hope you did.
Nope. Here I am.
There you are, brother. All right, you got it, bro.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, I don't have
hair
too
in my
much
mouth,
to say.
damn it.
A lot of this has been me curious to see what the conservatives say. I understand the concern. I recognize the idea that not all landlords are these like ultra wealthy. They look like the Monopoly man walking around with a monocle and a fucking tuxedo, right? But at the
Don't
same
tell
time,
them
we
about
have
my
to
monocle,
recognize that
Sansel.
the difference in wealth between someone that is a landlord and that is a renter is probably in general pretty stark. And I recognize that these there are outlier cases where there's people that are more wealthy than their landlords or have more means than their landlords to pay their rent or like to take care of themselves. However, right, we're talking about a moratorium
Excuse me.
that was definitely legal, that definitely had some amount of judicial wiggle room. I'm forgetting the word off the top of my head. They had some wiggle room whether they would allow it or not allow it. And I just really don't understand the reasoning for not allowing it to stay in place when we know that the real reason, when the stated reason was really, this is just a legal move because we need to make sure that the funds get out to people because there's like a sluggish rollout of the funds. The funds help both the renters and the landlords. In this scenario, we're legally fucking over renters when we could be helping both groups. This is just harming one group of people for no discernible reason, in my opinion. But yeah.
All right, thank you, Sansel. So, right now we have Pisco and IRI on the list. This is last call for any other hands before. Otherwise, we're just going to let those two go, and then we're going to go to closing statements. Sansel just spoke. So, if any of the three conservatives want to raise their hands before we let IRI and Pisco go. All right, cool. All right, so Pisco and then IRI,
We'll let the
and then
lefties
we'll
talk
move
themselves
to our
into a
closing
hole.
statements for this topic. So, Pisco, 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to remind the panel where we are in terms of the procedural posture of the case, or where we were, frankly, because I think it matters. If there were difficult issues of statutory interpretations to hash out on the merits, and there were, I'm not going to lie to you, like there are limiting phrases in the second sentence that says for fumigation, for this, right? And that could be conceivably thought of to limit the scope of the broad delegation in the first sentence. Although there is this other catch-all phrase, which I think undoes a lot of that at the end of the second sentence. That said, if those are issues of statutory interpretations, they should be handled by the lower federal courts first. Get some opinions by the lower federal courts. There's no need to rush this. No need to vacate this stay that's been in place and preserve the status quo when the balance of the equities is so starkly in favor of the government in this case. This is I don't think people are dealing rationally with the fact that hundreds of thousands of people are dying, that this Delta variant is ravishing especially the South right now. And that, I think, firmly puts, in terms of the analysis of the procedural posture and not vacating the stay while we're deliberating in the lower courts, at the very least, maintain the status quo for the sake of the lives of this country. And that's where I think policy meets the legal analysis, because one of the most important factors when you're sort of granting this kind of emergency relief or injunctions is the balance of equities, is policy, is what is the purpose, the government's purpose, what will the public interest be? And courts are encouraged to consider those factors when deciding to rule on injunctive relief. If there was a circuit split below too, and so it's not a cut and dry case one way or the other, I think Breyer is dead to rights. Allow the lower federal courts to have their full opinions and keep the vacatur while those proceedings are moving.
All right. Thank you, Pisco. All right, IRI, 2 minutes, last words before we go to the closing statements.
Yeah, it was brought up that Biden was concerned about the legality of a moratorium, and that's fair, but I think what Biden was more concerned with was a lengthier ruling from the Supreme Court that would further curb his ability to use a moratorium in the future. And that's what happened here. We ended up getting quite the details that really eliminates this as an option in the future. And that's going to hurt all of us. If there's another
me.
variant that's even worse, Biden's not going to be able to do an eviction moratorium. So like Pisco
He
said,
shouldn't be able
if
to.
there's another
Shouldn't be able to
variant
seize
that this
people's
time
homes.
kills 80% of us, well, Biden's not going to have that authority through the CDC because the Supreme Court has issued a lengthy ruling saying you can't do that. So that was what led to the hesitancy. That's why he revised it. And I thought he gave it a pretty good shot, but it sucks that we're in this position. But I don't think anybody could have predicted the Delta variant. And I bring that up again because a lot of people will point to Brett Kavanaugh's opinion or his little blurb in paragraph in the first ruling to lift the moratorium. And again, that was in June. That was before the Delta variant. If you guys go back, put yourself in June, we were looking good. It was looking like that white boy summer was coming to reality, and things shut down really quickly with the Delta variant. And here we are.
Thank you, IRI. To further illustrate that point, just like this is a piece of information for everybody. In terms of the IRI pointed out earlier that 20% of the counties have been covered under the modified moratorium compared to like the original moratorium passed by Congress, so like smaller in scale. Because of the spread of the Delta variant, that the day of that court passing, the date of this court case, that number had gone up to over 90%. So the modified moratorium that was specifically focused on COVID-heavy areas is almost now the same size as the original because of the spread of COVID.
Yeah, something like 90% of the counties in the U.S. have a very high transmission rate right now.
All right. So now we are going to go to closing statements. We're going to start with Biggs. Like I said, Pisco had the first word, and he gets the last word on this. We will reverse it and give Biggs the first and last word for topic number 2. But Biggs, 1 minute on the clock, buddy. Final thoughts on this topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things that I do want to bring up is, and I know this might not have anything to do with it, but when you look at the Fourth Amendment, it says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures. To me, I think that this is probably something that may fall under that. Again, I'm not a legal expert, obviously. Pisco would know much more about this than I would. But to me, I don't necessarily think this is a reasonable seizure of property because, in effect, these people are breaking a contract. They're not paying their funds by default, mostly the government, by shutting things down and by not being able to handle this crisis in a manner that we could continue on by having business. Where I'm lucky where I live, we didn't have nearly as much shutdowns as a lot of places did, and I'm thankful for that. But I think in this case, I think we need to focus on how we can have the best outcome for everybody involved, and I think that would have been to just not have this at all, so that when there were people being removed because they couldn't pay, it would have been less of a flow, whereas now we've actually seen the maximum amount of harm because not only we have the most amount of people now being evicted at this time, they couldn't have kept this going forever, so we knew this was going to happen eventually. So I think that this actually was the most harmful thing that they could have done by having this moratorium in the first place, and now we're reaping, or we're actually seeing the terrible outcomes of this, and hopefully the people are paying their rents and filling out the stuff, and we won't even have any problems. But again, I'm not being too hopeful in that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Biggs. And then as of before, we are going to give everyone 80 seconds for their closer because that's what Biggs got, and he set the tone for the closing statements.
Sorry.
So, no, it's okay. I promise if someone's like going, I normally try not to cut them off like immediately if you're going to finish your thoughts soon anyway. Sansol, 80 seconds on the clock for your closer. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I spoke, I basically gave my closing. I think it's really interesting to see the perspective of conservatives here because I really haven't seen them talking about the ending of the moratorium in general. I like to be able to see what people on the other side of the political aisle think. I still don't quite get it. I usually am able to understand the thought process, but on this one, I really can't. Especially when we're looking at a situation where both sides were going to benefit, and then we just cut one side out when we recognize that the moratorium was going to end on October 3rd, and then we would have to like reconsider past that.
Everybody benefits, but everybody loses because where the fuck do you think that money comes from? That $40 billion that comes from the taxpayers. We're just kicking the can down the road.
A legal case that would probably be
so fucking dumb.
Better long term. But yeah, I think the effects of this are pretty bad, and also just the way it happened was pretty bad. So
thank you everybody for hanging out, by the way. You guys are all amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I would just say, in closing, my only concern about this has been whether or not the policy is legal and addresses the needs of the people affected. I don't really care if someone's a landlord or a renter. I just want people that need help to get it. Also, I would say
What's
that
up,
I think
computer?
Pisco's
Thank you.
position actually makes a lot of sense. If there are any
My
facts that
boys.
I am unaware of, I don't see a reason that the lower courts couldn't address it. I think it makes sense that way, unless there's some reason I'm not aware of that the Supreme Court had to come to this position. Um, I'd also say that I actually am happy I had this conversation. I mainly engage with like right wing media. I try to be like as open as I can, but I only have so much time. Um, and this is just literally just the case. This is just true. The first time I've ever heard the moratorium be discussed in the context of slowing the spread of coronavirus was actually today. I was actually under the impression that this was just economic relief before today. So I'm excited that I actually hadn't considered that before talking to y'all and like doing some little research on this. So I
I
appreciate.
really hope
the
I get to
engagement 'cause,
burn
I think y'all might have like shifted my
Pisco
perspective
and
on it a little bit. Like I
IRI
said,
on
it's
the
literally,
next
for me, it's
topic
literally
with
like,
what they
is it
said at the
legal?
beginning of this
Does it help
topic.
people? That's all I care about. So I appreciate the discussion.
Thank you, Drew. And if you want, I can link this to you after. The CDC actually like published like when they did the eviction moratorium, they had like a 16-page like thing explaining why they did it, and they go through like why they say had all their different caveats. They're like, hey, like poor people seem to spread it more because like they have less like access to stuff. So like there's reasons why they made it like income based as well. So that wasn't like just economic. It seems like there's some reason like why they did that. So I can show you that later. But for the interest of time, IRI, go ahead.
Yeah, boy, it has been a nice conversation. I'll echo what Drew said. And that was the primary reasoning by the CDC for issuing the moratorium, was to prevent the spread of disease. In fact, the economic impact is to be considered pretty minimal for people being evicted. I know that sounds crazy, but people will move in with relatives. They will move into shelters. Like, not all these people are going to just be unhoused on the street. So the bigger concern is the spread of the virus. And, you know, that impacts all of us. When 750,000 people are now moving in with other families, like that complicates things for sure. I do want to leave on some good news here. Look, the Biden administration isn't just laying down on the ground and crying about this. They have a plan to focus on a few states that are highly impacted. For some reason, a few states like Ohio have a lot of unpaid rent for some reason. So they're focusing on a handful of states. And I think I read there's like 176,000 applications that are being processed. The Secretary of the Treasury is working with local state governments to try to get this money out there. Like I said, they made the forms easier to apply. A lot more people are finding out about this because it's been in the news and such. So yeah, it didn't go as we would have liked. I would have loved to see all that money distributed, because again,
Yeah, the
Congress
Ohioans are just
allocated
lazy. Yep.
over double
I
what
know,
they
we're
thought
terrible.
would cover 12 months
We
of
just
back
watch
rent
the
for
Ohio
people.
State
So
Buckeyes
more than enough
win,
money.
and that's it. That's all we do, and drink beer.
You know, we'll have to look back
I
and
do.
see how we can improve this in the future. But the
Drink
fact
beer,
that the Supreme
watch
Court
football.
issued such a lengthy ruling here is disappointing, because we can't use this tool to help fight future pandemics. And that hurts all of us.
Thank you, IRI. Sparky.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, look, there was a lot of new information that was actually disseminated to me through this conversation. Thank you so much to all these participants. And Pisco, man, look, your knowledge on this and your law knowledge has really expanded my mind here. But when it comes down to things like the lower courts not getting involved, I imagine that would be because that SCOTUS was prior involved and already mentioned that, hey, this is not going to fly again. When it comes down to it, I really detest the idea that you said Breyer is dead to rights. If you're asking for another RBG moment, brother, don't go there. We don't wish bad on anyone. I hope Justice Breyer does exactly what he thinks is best. Biden and his creative writing, man, that is a good argument there,
guys.
IRI.
He got him.
We'll talk about that on the next topic. One interesting thing that wasn't brought up was actually the Third Amendment lawsuit that I believe that was dropped following this. I wish we could have gotten into that. I'll drop a link in the chat. One of my members in chat mentioned something about maybe next time if something like this happens, maybe we could look at a possible tiered program, giving renters a chance to pay more out in installments. And I heard a lot of whataboutism on the executive reach, and oh well, this was okay and this wasn't, and blah. Look, the topic that happened was the reason. Yes, sir. The reason why I mentioned things about the executive overreach was because of the different tiered system, how we are supposed to run this government. And I don't feel like that was addressed as much as I would have liked. But this was a great conversation. And look, what happened happened, and we're going to press on, and we're continue to America.
Thank you, Sparky. And then just to clarify for everyone, if you get added during an opening or closing statement, you don't get a chance to respond. That's just a way of making sure that we keep things moving forward. So, Pisco.
That was not my intention. I'm sorry.
No, Sparky, you're out. You're completely allowed to. You're allowed to call someone like a bitch or something if you want, like in the opening, like the opening and closing statements. Just realize that it's kind of bad. It's kind of bad form. But you didn't do that. That was okay. But don't worry about that. That's all right. So, Pisco, 80 seconds. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I think that the policy was one that was rationally determined by the CDC, and I trust it in terms of how it'll affect the pandemic. And so I'm sad to see the policy go. On legal grounds, I think that Breyer is correct legally that this should have gone to the lower courts, even notwithstanding the fact that it was there on the first appeal or the first case, because it was a different policy, as IRR explained. There were different eviction moratoriums.
Yeah,
and so I think they should be treated
but it was basically
differently.
the same.
And
Yep,
on
that's
the question of why did I bring up Trump as whataboutism? I bring it up because I'm concerned about hypocrisy from the court and also from commentators. And I think that we need to be consistent when we're calling out executive overreach. And I think if we're going to interpret the suspension clause, for instance, to include the most it could possibly be thought to include, then we should, I think, interpret another broad delegation to executive agencies broadly as well. I think it's constitutional to delegate broadly. I don't think there's a problem with Congress determining that agencies have better training and are just more competent to address issues as they come. But we should be consistent in our interpretive approach is all I mean by that. And I think I'll echo what everyone said. I think this was a lovely conversation, and I'm glad we had it.
Thank you, Pisco. Thank you, everybody. So I hope you all enjoyed our first topic. It is currently 9:11. Oh God. We are going to take a quick 4-minute break. If you gotta use the bathroom, you gotta get a drink or something. I need to refill my water, also stuff. We will reconvene at 9:15. So everyone, please be back on time for that. Take 4.
My thing.
All right. I am going to switch over and give me one moment, my lads. Okay. Let me step outside. Oh shit. 'Cause I'm gonna smoke. What do y'all think? What do y'all think so far? How's the debate going? Man, I feel good. I feel real good about my performance there. What do y'all think? But of course, I'm shooting my own horn. I'm feeling good about myself. So, long wording to our conference has to leave. So, yeah, I think it has been an interesting thing. I held my own on that slide. I think I actually challenged the most educated person in the room. Something I'm a little proud about. Yeah, Drew guy kind of stuck on the whole. Yeah, they do hate landlords. Look, people hate us because they hate us.
Yeah, I think Aircraft left his audio on, people. Oh no.
Chat, take this brief moment before we start up again. to say, hey, if you like this sort of content, if you like these panels, I host them every Saturday from 8 to 10 Eastern Standard Time normally. Sometimes they go a little bit longer. If you want to support the channel, I don't need your money. I have a great IRL job that pays my bills. But if you want to help out, you want to help this channel keep growing, drop a follow or link the stream or tell your friends about us. So thank you all so much for everyone who's watching, and I hope you can stick around with us in the future.
What an honest dude. Says I don't need the money, but I still appreciate it. God damn. Look at the character of this man.
I'm a pretty well off. I was pretty lucky. I got a good amount of scholarships and stuff in college, so I don't have a lot of student debt. I'm pretty open about my salary. I make between 50, 60K, and I'm a 23-year-old man with no kids or stuff. So I'm crushing it. I don't need people's money, and I don't want to ask poor
You're
kids
crushing it on so many levels.
Thank you.
You really are.
I don't ask poor kids or people on Twitch to give me money when I really, really don't need it. I always tell them to support other streamers and stuff who actually need the money. People who do this as a job. This is just a hobby for me.
Give Hanz your money, everybody. Don't listen to him. Give him your money. He's amazing. He's the best Pokemon streamer ever. Ever.
Okay, so we did a hype train on Hanz just the other day. And he was freaking out. It was awesome. It was amazing. It was a great show of love amongst his community. Look, I like Hanz. I think Hanz is probably he's my
Look
favorite.
Look at those sexy arms all crossed. Look at how sexy those biceps are.
No, show off the meaty tries, baby. Show them tries off, baby. I saw it.
Oh, you like it? Like a little bit of
Yeah, you got that little.
Oh no!
Yeah, man. Do the definition. Do those 15 pound tricep. Yeah, man.
Little bit of in my life. Little bit of popping on my side.
I'm sorry, guys. We are postponing the next session for the gun show. All right.
I'm so hello. What a flavor of open carry is this?
Oh man. But look, man, you need to get a license for carrying those guns, brother. The state you live in had concealed carry requirements there, brother. I'm just telling.
I live in Florida. I didn't know that. That's cool.
I know. No, you do not have constitutional carry yet.
Didn't Texas just pass that?
Yeah,
that's pretty sweet.
The great state of Oklahoma has it where I live, but I'm still a CCA.
Arizona has it. I lived there for a couple of years, so.
I actually can't decide how I feel about it. I didn't feel like the licensure system was that bad.
If it's a may issue or a shall issue, I think is really where I like to draw the line. I think it all should be a shall issue.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
So Texas was shall issue, and the cost to get a license was pretty cheap. And I kind of liked that you had to learn about the laws of carrying before carrying.
I've got mixed feelings on that. A lot of people say they wish that people got training. And I'm a firm believer. I tell people all the time, look,
I'm about to go lefty on the next topic,
go to all these,
but I'll still make good right arguments. I don't think it should be
requirements.
Yeah. We can say that for another time. Everyone is here.
Good.
We are past schedule. No more thirsting over me, Biggs. I see you.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself.
I will tell your wife. So we are going to start. Just a quick thing. Sorry. So the topic for our second part of the evening is about the other Supreme Court decision.
I think I've seen Drew on other stuff.
One second. Sorry. In this case.
Texas
abortion law. Was the Supreme Court correct?
Pisco said he wanted more full lower court interaction on the eviction moratorium. Let's see what he says on the abortion.
What are the ramifications moving forward?
IRI said
based on
he liked the creativity of the Biden admin,
and how will this affect
and let's see how he talks about the creativity of the Texas legislature.
For the audience and for everyone, I assume everyone in the group has read the thing, and how the specific method of enforcement for the law. It does not have. It allows the suing of people who get abortions or aid and abet people who get abortions after 6 weeks. But it's not the state. Are you shaking your head because I'm wrong, or shaking your head because you're frustrated?
Not people who get abortions.
It's the people who provide abortions.
It's who provide abortions, not get abortions.
Oh, okay, sorry. So provide abortions. Thank you for the clarification.
Or aid and abet. You're right. Or intend to procure or facilitate it, or aid or abet.
Yeah. And the specific part of why
Yeah, I
the
don't agree with you. I think
mechanism
it's bullshit.
is unique is that it's not, say, the state suing these people or enforcing it. It's allowing private citizens to sue the providers of these abortion. And so I know Biggs is on the non-conservative side of this, as far as I can tell for this topic. So I just want to ask a quick question for Drew and Aircraft Sparky. Are you two, which of you, or if either of you, are you in favor of allowing this law to remain in place? Which of you, are either of you?
I have some concerns, but my current understanding is I think so. But we'll see as we'll see as the conversation unfolds. So I think that based on what I read, it should remain in place. But so we'll play it out. We'll see what happens. Okay.
I was only asking specifically because this went from being a 3v3 to potentially like a 2v4. So I just want to make sure that you get adequate speaking time. So in this case, I'm actually going to move Aircraft Sparky to get the first and last word on this, just to make sure that the opposing view gets enough airtime, because there's going to be a disproportionate amount of people on this panel who are arguing from the other side. Syllabic Abjad in chat, I'm really sorry. I did try and get women for this panel. They were unavailable. You can provide a seat at the table, but if they don't want to take the seat, I can't make them. I'm really sorry about this, that it's a bunch of white guys here, but that's where we ended up this evening. So please feel free to sue me for $10,000 for aiding in and abetting the hating of women. So we're gonna start in this case to make this as fair as possible. We're gonna have Sparky and be first, and then Drew be last. So that way they get the first and last word for both these, and then we're gonna have the four people who are more supportive of it sandwiched between the two of them for the opening and closing statements, because you're gonna have twice as much speaking time. So that makes sense to have it be the middle as opposed to the beginning and ends. So with this in mind, everyone seemed to do about 80 seconds for their opening and closing last time. So I'm going to bring that over into this one, 80 seconds for the opening and closers. I will be strict about enforcing that, so I will cut you off at 80 seconds. So please just be respectful. I'm giving you more time. Don't turn this into everyone now gets 100 seconds for their opening and closers, because we want to really get to the general statements, to the general conversation, so we can have more back and forth.
Don't make Hans get the chains out, okay?
Don't make me angry.
He will start going crazy and turning green, ripping his shirt. It's not a pretty sight, except for people like me, you know.
It's like, all right. So,
I mean, I would love to see the swole left step up, but no. Look, when it comes down to this, I don't like the way this is written. I think it is sneaky. It is creative writing, just like what Biden did in the previous topic we were talking about.
He's stealing my shit again.
What I
do
want to see, something that Pisco will appreciate, is I actually want it to hold only for one reason only, because I want the lower courts. I want this to be dove into actually good. I think that this does violate the Constitution somewhat. However,
I know. I thought to sue someone you had to show some proof of damage. But that's the whole reason why this law is
I don't
bullshit.
think
so
killing
dumb.
another human is really an answer to things. I think it's more about individual responsibilities and things like that.
Basically, the government skirting the responsibility to say, hey, we're not going to be the ones that are going to be shot down, so we're going to give it to the people to be able to be deputized.
I don't think killing an infant in the womb is a right. In fact, Roe v. Wade was founded on the idea of the Fourth Amendment. It was the right to privacy. I think that is a solid. That was a solid argument back then. I think it needs to go over to the 10th Amendment for states' rights. That way, every state gets to determine their laws, not ban abortion outright, but limit it. Safe, legal, and rare is the standard.
Thank you, Sparky. Sansel.
Yeah, so I live in Texas, and people are very angry here. I've been listening to NPR and hearing people's questions about this. It seems to be like conservatives are also angry about it. They're not angry about the abortion part. It seems like they're angry about the other things that are put into this bill, like the weird bounty hunter system where you can, without any kind of damage or harm to you, just go out and start suing people and get a bounty from the state of Texas for $10,000, which means that in other states, if this is allowed to be upheld as constitutional, they can start, doing other unconstitutional things that are, enforced not by law enforcement, but by other citizens, right? So say California does this whole bounty hunter thing, and they say, oh, well, the person next to me has guns, right? And I'm going to, or like they have a gun that's illegal in this state, right? And they rat on them and they sued them for that, the state doesn't have to like get rid of guns. They're essentially getting rid of them de facto through this law. So
Thank you, Sansol. Pisco.
This law is an abomination. It's truly evil. Not only does it violate clearly established precedent of the Supreme Court, namely Roe and Casey and other cases, which affirm that the state is not allowed to ban abortion until viability, and this law bans it at cardiac activity. It also does something never before seen in my mind in terms of its
In my
enforcement
mind.
mechanism, allowing essentially private bounty hunters, private attorney generals to violate clearly established constitutional laws as a way to weaponize doctrines like standing,
Sparky's too original for
weaponize
me, yeah.
doctrines like
He's an OG
state
like me,
sovereignty.
man. I like Sparky.
Whatever
I think we
aircraft
get
Sparky
along
said
very well
about
in real life, for sure.
killing life, human life, I think is conclusory. I don't really care if we want to, we can turn this into a debate about the morality and ethics of abortion. But I think we should concentrate now on what the Supreme Court has done. It has opened a Pandora's box of litigation that's just going to blow up in the lower courts, and also of other laws that are coming as well. And I really want conservatives on this panel to stop and think a little bit about, in a time when they're arguing against vaccine mandates, if they think it's a good idea to allow private citizens to enter into your private medical history, and to impinge on a quote unquote private substantive right.
Thank you, Pisco. IRI.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of the things my fellow lefties have said here. I think it's a despicable law. It's unconstitutional, first of all. Roe v. Wade is the settled law of the land for decades now. And the fact that the Supreme Court let this law go into effect is just an abdication of their responsibility. It's shocking. And it should have my friends over on the right freaking out. I mean, a couple of these guys were on another debate show last night, kind of just shrugging, like, well, we should make up for it by
Not me.
expanding education in schools and access to contraceptives. Well, you'd be surprised what's going on in those areas too. It ain't what you think. It's not going in the right direction, especially in Texas. But I want to focus on the no exception for rape and incest. That is just alarming to me right there. I've been debating people on abortion for years, and I will use this as a gambit to paint conservatives into a corner and say, if you care about life so much, why are you making an exception for rape or incest? And most of them will say, well, it's just not fair for a woman to have a baby of her attacker. But not in Texas. They don't care. And I think that is just disgusting. And the fact that people on the right aren't freaking out about this, I mean, you guys your GOP's headed on a suicide march here. On the left, we love it. This is great for us. Nobody's talking about Biden's problems in Afghanistan anymore. Thank you very much, Texas GOP. And the midterms are looking a lot better right now because remember the Women's March? They get pretty fired up over stuff like this.
Thank you, IRI. Biggs.
Yeah, so I don't think that anybody should ever have an abortion. I don't think that with the amount of access to contraceptives and things like that, education, I know IRI just said that that's not necessarily the case, especially for like evangelical Christians. Obviously, they think that that's bad. They don't want to do education and contraceptives, but I don't think anybody should have an abortion ever. However, I don't think it's my place or the government's place to get involved in a medical decision between a woman and her doctor. I would like to quote what Justice Sotomayor said. She said, "The court's order is stunning. Presented with an application to enjoin a flagrantly unconstitutional law engineered to prohibit women from exercising their constitutional rights and evade judicial scrutiny, a majority of the justices opted to bury their heads in the sand." I completely agree with her in this. I think that the right-leaning justices should be ashamed. This law is horrible. Like Pisco said, having bounties put on people is ridiculous. This opens up a whole new can of worms, like Pisco and IRI said, as well as Sansol, things about like red flag laws with guns, things like that. I just think that this is just completely ridiculous. I hope that it gets struck down. And one thing that I'm hopeful is that because all the justices in there, if you read through all their decisions and dissents, they basically, even the affirmations said that this is not a binding, like we're not saying this is constitutional or unconstitutional. I think that that's basically saying like, hey, we're going to strike this down eventually, but they want to see the lower courts go. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Biggs. All right. For everyone in chat, just very quickly, I am
The law is bad.
posting
The law is
the
bad.
Supreme Court
Just
case
say.
that a lot of people on this panel will be citing for the purpose of this conversation. So I'm linking it right there for all of you if you want to look at it yourselves. Aw, that's so cute.
They said so cute.
We are going to go to Drew as the final person. Everyone's welcome to start raising their hands. Pisco, I saw you do it a little bit early, if that's all right. And then for the purpose of the
Fine,
general
nobody
discussion, I just
knows.
want everyone to understand
I'm
that
on
Sparky
microphone, so I can
and
hear
Drew, but in this case, Drew's like kind of like.
So I've had
like,
two
back and forth on this one. Not sure where he's like at on this, but like
double
because
vodka
of
and
the
cranberries
amount of
and 4 beers
weight
so
against
far.
say like the specific viewpoint that
pretty good.
Sparky holds. I'm going to prioritize him and allowing him to respond because it's going to be really like frustrating if he gets dogpiled by 4 people and he only gets say 2 minutes to respond to all of it. So just understand you're probably going to be hearing a lot more from Sparky and from Drew compared to our
And-
lefties. Just for the purpose of
It's
having
hot panel sexy time.
I still will
like-
back up Sparky on a lot of his takes. We did talk about this last night as well. And so I know we're gonna have some other takes that I won't agree with the left on, specifically if we get in like the morality stuff. But I think we're gonna have good. Sparky's got a lot of good shit. So
all right. Drew, 80 seconds on the clock. And then I see Pisco and Sparky to start off with the hand raise. IRI, I see you as well. And then we will be off to the races. So 80 seconds. Drew, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah. So I actually, so a couple things. I'm very pro-life. I'm conservative. This is no secret. But I actually don't disagree with a lot of the concerns of what people are putting forward. I would only note that if this is a genuine loophole, they've actually figured a way to write this law and like meander through things, and they actually can avoid judicial
I
scrutiny.
don't think they're gonna be able to do this.
I would say that the Supreme Court did the right thing here. Throw it down, let it go back down, and then close the fucking loophole. Okay. It could be the case that it doesn't fucking matter. This isn't actually a good loophole. And so they should strike it down anyway. I don't know. I don't know enough about the law to know that. But I would just say simply because the law is clearly aimed in kind of in bad faith to kind of meander around this stuff, just because it's like that, I don't think that means that we should strike it down immediately. If there's actually a loophole, let's close it, and then we can move on and actually have.
Man, Sansel hasn't said shit on
actually
this
challenge
so
this
far.
thing. I think it's great that they mentioned over and over again that this doesn't actually refer to the constitutionality of this, and it doesn't affect the ability for the lower courts to address it. I think that's cool. I'm left in a position where I'm a conservative. I don't like abortion. I really think it's evil, but also I would feel very weird if the left started skirting things like this in the courts too. So yeah, basically it just comes down to if this is a real loophole or not, and I think that the process should be respected and it should be closed through the legal means necessary if it's a genuine loophole.
All right. Thank you, Drew. You're going to now move into the open discussion portion. We'll have this like set for about 38 minutes, and we'll see where we're at that point in time. If people want to continue that conversation, the existing list is Pisco, Sparky, IRI, Sansel, and then Biggs. So, Pisco, 2 minutes on the clock. Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the big problems, Drew, with what the Supreme Court did here was it didn't even substantively address the procedural merits of the case. It didn't resolve these procedural issues, which I'm not going to explain for you guys, take forever, but standing doctrine and sovereign immunity doctrines that are what's essentially limiting and why this law, which was meticulously designed to prevent judicial scrutiny, essentially to evade and to use those doctrines in ways that they were never envisioned to be used. And so that's one of the problems with this opinion is if there are these thorny procedural issues to work out, one, maybe resolve them, or the more sensible thing to do is to issue a stay on the law, don't allow the law to go into effect, and then, just like in the previous case, solve the procedural merits in the lower federal courts. Wait for a full briefing. The district court was ready to have full oral argument and ready to issue an opinion. They didn't need any more briefing, and then you could have done that with the circuit courts as well. And that would be the proper course of things. But unfortunately, I think what this court is positioning itself to do is to repeal and overturn Roe v. Wade this spring or this fall. And I think you can expect that to happen, unfortunately. And I know that IRI, when he was talking about we love this, he was speaking, I think, in pure power politics kind of sense, in the sense that he's kind of looking at. But I think he would recognize, as we all would, that in the meantime, abortion centers are stopping services. They're closing down. Women aren't getting abortions. And Roe v. Wade, for all functional purposes, is overturned in Texas, where it started. Roe v. Wade was started with a full-on Texas ban, and
It's
there's
fine.
a full-on abortion
I
ban
don't
going
mind.
through Mississippi right now. And I think
I'm
that
just
you
glad
can
his
expect
viewers
the
are
court
checking me out.
to
It's awesome.
to revisit Roe
Making some
negatively
follows.
and to not find a substantive privacy right. And if that's the case, I think you don't have a private substantive right with respect to vaccines. And so all your arguments about vaccine mandates go out of the window, I think, once Roe falls.
All right. Drew, I'm going to allow you to respond briefly. I just want to quickly apologize. I made a crack about everyone on this panel being white. Apparently, Pisco is a person of color. Sorry about that, Pisco. I'll make sure to properly identify you in the future about that. That was my mistake. So, Drew, you're welcome to respond briefly to Pisco, and then we're going to throw it to Sparky.
Pisco is a PIC,
I'm gonna sort
everybody.
of set the
Or
vaccine thing
POC,
aside. It's
sorry.
like,
He's
I
a
don't wanna get into that can of
POC.
worms at the moment.
Hey, POC,
I
yeah,
just
you
had
know
a
me.
question for Pisco. Do you think that the correct course of action here was to
Silly.
go through a stay?
It's silly.
You think like the justices are doing something slightly dishonest here? They're like playing
Yeah.
into their own perspective. Yeah. So
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. I think it's unprincipled, and I think they just don't want to show support for Roe v. Wade right now. I think what the court should have done is immediately stop enjoying this law and rule it as unconstitutional. I think that's what they should have done. But at the very least, do what the chief suggested, which was stay the law. This is a flagrantly unconstitutional law. No one even can argue that it's consistent with Roe and Casey and all the other cases. We've had a case as soon as last year dealing with a substantive right to abortion. And so, yeah, I think it's dishonest.
Okay. Yeah. So I wanted to clarify this. So you don't think that there's any like good like legal thinking going on
No.
here? You think it's
No, not
purely
at all.
dishonesty? Okay.
They're never going to let these procedural issues stand because everyone can think of the hypotheticals. What if they did this with guns? What if they did this with segregation? It can't be the case. The Constitution is just invalid when states apply these ridiculous private enforcement schemes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you, Pisco. Thank you, Drew. Now we're going to throw it to Sparky. Sparky, go ahead.
Muted, buddy.
Look, when it comes down to it, Pisco, man, you had such a great argument, and the last one about the lower courts, and I think I kind of pushed that one aside, mentioning that SCOTUS already talked about that before, but it even says here in this is in Roberts dissenting. He says we are at this point to ask to resolve a novel question, at least preliminarily, in the first instance, by the course of 2 days without the benefit of consideration by the district courts or courts of appeal. It does need to be actually, and that's what I said. Look, I don't like this whole snitches get stitches type attitude. Bounties are a bad thing in this thing, and it really, look, I believe in privacy.
Look,
I'm a firm
he's like
believer in privacy when it comes down to
he's like,
it.
look,
I
all
really
right, look,
think
everybody.
we don't need neighbors snitching on neighbors. A settled law, though, IRI. Look, settled precedents is the thing. Law is never settled as long as there's different ways to interpret it. Where Roe v. Wade may have been the law of the land and still is today, this is not a cancellation of Roe. This is actually a limiting of Roe. Now, what I am talking about is I think that this needs to be handled as a 10th Amendment thing, where individual states, the population of those states, vote on these things. If they want abortion limited, they can set different degrees. People can vote for it, the democratic process, because licensing for doctors goes through the states. You don't have federally licensed doctors. You have state licensed doctors. Just like Pisco, he is going through the bar in his own state. And if he wants to practice in other states, he has to do so. And he has to take the bar for those states as well. So this is more of a states' right issue than more of a Fourth Amendment issue, in my opinion. And this is not about the courts going in to the individual's files. This is about limiting the practitioner on what they are licensed and legal to do. That's where I am on abortion.
IRI, you're supposed to be next, but you were also directly added by Sparky. So I'm going to give you a little bit more time to say your specific point, and then you're welcome to respond to Sparky, and you guys are welcome to have a small back and forth. So go ahead with that.
Yeah, I just want to say, Sparky mentioned that he's an abortion abolitionist. I think we all are, right? We all want to live in a world where abortions don't happen. It's a horrific thing that we would love to avoid, and I'm sure every single woman who's had one would love to avoid it too, right? But we're not there, and that's the problem with this law. Is it's putting the cart ahead of the horse. And I looked into what's going on with sex ed, what's going on with contraceptive access in Texas specifically to see, okay, maybe they're so far ahead of the game that they think that they've got ahead of this. But what I saw was 1.7 million women have no reasonable access to health centers. and they live in what are called contraceptive deserts. So that's not good. That's just punishing people by taking away their only other option of abortion, because they're going to have these abortions one way or the other due to socioeconomic concerns. People can't have a third child. Young teenager doesn't want to have a child right now. And then as far as sex ed goes, I was alarmed to hear this, and I'm just putting this out there for people to understand where we're at with this stuff. In Texas, health education is optional in high school. That is crazy to me. And in middle school, they only were allowed to teach abstinence until very recently, November of last year. Now they can start teaching a little more. So if we don't have those tools in place already, then how dare we take away access to abortion from these miserable individuals or people that just aren't ready to start a family? I think it's atrocious, and I think we should all be embarrassed and outraged about it.
Marky, you're welcome to briefly respond. You guys can do a thing for about 2 or 3 minutes. So go ahead.
Mute it again, bud.
I'm totally pro streamer moment, right? I apologize.
I got your back. I got your back.
I appreciate you, brother. Look, I want abortion done, and I'm not going to argue with what IRI said. He's being reasonable. He's not saying, "Oh, we need to abort." I get that. I don't have much to respond there, IRI. Let's go on to the next person, and because I'm still gathering my stuff. But COVID tip lines, by the way, the COVID tip lines existed in New York City. That might have been where Texas legislature got this idea. I don't know for certain, but this already does exist in New York City. The snitches get stitches type thing. Now they're not giving out bounties, from what I understand, but they are arresting people based on tips. Which I think is atrocious. And I think I'm consistent across both ways there. Yeah.
A quick response. I just want to, the thing that there is private enforcement schemes of all sorts of kind. I mean, in some sense, Title VII and a lot of the civil rights legislation, that's private enforcement from individuals. The problem is this is exclusive private enforcement in order to insulate from. And incentivizing with minimum statutory damages of $10,000. Huge incentive there. There's a broad venue statute, which allows you to essentially drag and hail someone into court if you're a Texas resident from anywhere. There's mandatory injunctions, like mandatory attorney's costs. There's also, this is a procedural hand grenade, which I think is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's cynical, and it worked. And so I just want to say, it's more than just the private enforcement part. It's the exclusive, it's everything else around it. It's the venue, it's the damages, it's the injunctions. All of that together is what makes this a beast.
Right,
Can I say a quick thing, Hans?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Pisco, thank you for saying earlier that I didn't mean that I'm happy that we got this gift from the GOP, and I'd way rather not have this. I was just speaking politically, so thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, I knew that what you meant.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. So the next people on the list, we have Sansel, Biggs, and Pisco. All these people are anti this ruling. So please, for Drew and for Sparky, if you want to jump in, please feel free to liberally do quick responses.
Gotcha.
Just so that you can adequately respond to their points and not have to worry of having like a 6-minute like dissertation that you're gonna have to refute. So Sansel, 2 minutes on the clock, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it was Sparky that said that this isn't a cancellation of Roe. This is just a limitation on it. Well, I mean, shit, if we can just limit people's rights to the point where they functionally don't have them, then I want to start implementing like a 50,000% tax on all firearms and ammunition.
Gotcha.
And really quick, I just want to say,
wait, Sparky, you're welcome to respond.
Please
Please don't
jump in on this.
Let him finish.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just want to say, like, I think that this idea that this is meaningful access to to the right to have an abortion and the right to make decisions about your own healthcare is laughable when most women don't even know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. Most abortions happen in between conception and I think week 18.
13.
13, yeah. So that's where most abortions happen. If they wanted to put a limit at like the middle of the second trimester or something like that, or like past week 20 5 or something like that, that would be more reasonable in an argument in terms of having meaningful access. But this is effectively a ban because most women are not going to be able to get an abortion. It also makes it to where you're criminalized essentially for like, say you're an Uber driver and someone takes an Uber to go to the abortion clinic, right? You can, even if you don't know that what they're doing is an illegal abortion, you can now be sued by some private individual. Like, this is fucking crazy, right? So the idea that this is meaningful access is laughable.
Okay, so
If Sparky, you're welcome to respond. Go ahead.
yes. Quick, when it comes down to it, criminalize? No. See, there's no jail time with this. This is all civil. This is not a criminal
Yeah,
thing.
he slipped up, but he's right about
Yeah.
the actual thing, like the
So
actual.
an Uber driver could
when
get
you're talking about
sued
Uber
for thousands of
drivers,
dollars.
Please let
He meant
Sparky finish.
liability.
Wait. I got Pisco, Sanzel. Sparky waited pretty patiently for you to finish. Please let him speak. You're welcome to attack anything he says immediately afterwards. Go ahead, Sparky.
when it comes to the criminalization, okay, that isn't a thing. This is a civil thing, and you're right. It does put people who do rideshare things in jeopardy. But then companies like Lyft has actually stepped up and said that they will cover all the court costs and what fees occurred by their drivers, as they also donated $1 million to Planned Parenthood. So Lyft itself, lefties, y'all need to start going on Lyft. Screw Uber, go Lyft, because they're showing, they're living your values.
Quick response to that.
Yes.
Do you think that we should just criminalize everything and then have companies?
This is not
pay for
criminalized.
I'm sorry. Should we
difference there.
create the incentive for people to sue people over the smallest of infractions?
No.
Because their
I don't like this. I don't like this.
legal fees, because that's wild.
But I've already stated that I don't
Yeah.
like this whole bounty system. I think it's actually disgusting. I don't think neighbors should be snitching on neighbors, things like that.
Yeah.
What
so
I
just
have
don't understand
said,
why-
what I've advocated for, which no one has addressed, is the fact that states' rights. This is something that I think is more important than the Fourth Amendment freaking argument that Roe was founded on. I think individual states, the population of that state, should actually vote, say what they want. Where did they draw the line? What did they consider an actual life? Because legitimately, that is usually where we delineate. Just like
So-
IRI stated that he wants to end abortion. I know what his sentiment is. I feel that. I'll tell you, like, things like with rape and incest, people can get treated up to 6 weeks. If you are raped, the very next day, you can go get a DNC morning after pill, whatever you need to do. You should actually go report these things and go get medical treatment immediately. If you wait 18 weeks after the fact, and I understand this is traumatic stuff, I'm not downplaying this stuff by any means. Okay, I get why people wait, because they're still processing and everything else, and they may not even realize fully they've been raped until maybe like 2 or 3 days later. Traumatic experience. I get it. I'm being as empathetic.
I
But once you
gotta
realize
respond
that,
to something
get
really
that
quick.
stuff done real quick.
So you're simultaneously saying that you want states to be able to make these decisions on people's rights that are constitutionally
Abortion
protected.
is not a right. Get it?
You have the right up to the until the
Liability.
the viability. Thank you. All right. So we've already talked about the unconstitutionality of a heartbeat bill, which is what this is. 6
Actually,
weeks
it
is
was
when-
asserted. We did not discuss it, and none of us are actual legal scholars. Pisco is closest to one. He is asserted, but he has not supported it. And precedence does show that to a point. I will give that. But all at the same time, I'm saying Roe was done on the wrong premise. It should be done by states' rights, 10th Amendment, baby. It is not spelled out in the Constitution, therefore federally should not be controlled.
So just so you
Software-
know, I'm going to save you a lot of headache in the future. It's
Go
not the
ahead.
Fourth Amendment that was invoked in Roe v. Wade, but the 14th Amendment
Oh,
due
14th.
process clause,
I'm
not the Fourth
sorry.
Amendment.
My bad. I thought it was a privacy thing.
Right,
Privacy right as found and understood in the 14th Amendment.
Okay, thank you.
all right. Thank you, guys. We're going to pull it back to the list now. The list exists as it is Biggs, then Pisco, and then IRI. So, Biggs, 2 minutes, buddy. Take it away.
Yeah, so I kind of want to go back to I think we need to focus on things that can limit the need for abortions in general, because I think that's what we all want to focus on. So I know IRI said about the birth control and contraceptive deserts. I think that's a little bit disingenuous. Like obviously that like what I'm looking at here on what I pulled up here is based on like healthcare facilities, but that doesn't necessarily mean like actual like the ability to get birth control with like pharmacies and things like that, or having actual like getting condoms as a man. I think this comes down to like men need to be educated that they need to make sure they're having a condom, and that women need to make sure they're either on birth control, or if they can't take birth control, that they're on some other type of contraceptive, right? And I think if we can actually limit the need to have these abortions in the first place, that's where we should be starting, and that's where the focus should be. Because I think that no matter what you want to do, if somebody's like even has to make that choice of having an abortion, that's such a traumatic experience. I haven't actually been personally involved with that, but I have been with miscarriages, and I know that that is just such a traumatic experience that I don't want anybody to have to go through that. So I think that's where we should kind of focus the legislation and things like that, like maybe putting things in, like I know IRI said about like having like the school like health is like optional. Like I think we do need to have some type of education for people, and obviously like I know Sparky and my other Republican friends would be a little bit concerned with that, like making sure it's like the parents are allowing that, and I think that is definitely reasonable. But I think that if we can focus on that first and actually eliminate the need to even have these abortions in the first place, we can do so much more than just having these like arbitrary bullshit laws put into place. And I think, like I said before, this is just a complete terrible law, and I think everybody kind of agrees with that, like with like the whole boundary system and stuff like that. So I think we can kind of go from there and just focus on like things we can actually improve it from the start, so we don't even have to have these decisions being made by these women, because I think women already have enough to go through that having them making the choice like this is just so terrible.
Thank you, Biggs. We're gonna go to Pisco, then IRI, and then I saw Drew's hand. So Pisco, go ahead.
So unfortunately, you can just think that Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided, and there are a lot of people who think that it's a tortured reading of the 14th Amendment, that you can better find that right in equal protection clause. I think what Ginsburg suggested, but your proposal, whatever you said, Aircraft Sparky, about the 10th Amendment is ludicrous. So the Bill of Rights initially, and most rights as conceived of in the original framing, were only to be applied to the federal government. And it's only with the passage of the 14th Amendment, which specifically calls out the states, that these rights have begun to be applied towards the states. And the 14th Amendment is the right which the court references when it's talking about Roe v. Wade. And that is what's being applied to the states. And so if you buy that interpretation of Roe v. Wade, that's how it gets applied to the states, as does the First Amendment, as does the Fourth Amendment, as we've incorporated these rights. And I'm pretty sure you want the First Amendment to be applied to the states. I'm pretty sure you want the Second Amendment to be applied to the states, because I'm sure you don't like New York banning of guns. I'm sure you don't want California to ban its guns. So on that, there's another legal principle, however, that's, I would say, just as vital and needs to be considered in this context. And that's the principle of stare decisis. Not every time do we relitigate issues from the past. We're not relitigating judicial review. We're not relitigating Marbury versus Madison. We're not relitigating Marbury all the time. When IRI says it's settled law, it's because we need to be able to order our lives, and people have reliance interests that need to be respected, and the institution of the Supreme Court needs to be respected. There are certain factors that we look to when we're deciding to overturn precedent, because sometimes, of course, we must overturn precedent. I would argue that the factors, by and large, point against overturning Roe v. Wade. It's been affirmed numerous times. There's a huge reliance interest. It's a workable standard that we have, the undue burden standard, and the court hasn't articulated reasons for overturning it. And that's precisely why there should be a stay on this order. Well, if they're going to decide to overturn Roe v. Wade, allow them to do so on the merits. But in the meantime, so many people are suffering because of settled law, a violation of settled law. And what's more, the Texas law, last thing I'll say, it says that even if you have an abortion in Texas in reliance on the settled constitutional law, you're going to be held retroactively liable, even though Roe v. Wade wasn't overturned when you had that abortion. And so this is a big problem in terms of institutional competency and our principles as a Supreme Court.
Sparky, if you have anything you want to say, like you're welcome to have a brief back and forth with Pisco. Or if you have any questions, you're welcome to go ahead with those.
Okay, so you think that the Supreme Court should have stayed it based on Roe. My question is, why you were arguing in our last segment about how they needed to go through the lower courts and everything. Here, they actually argued that needed to go through the lower courts to get the nuance. Possibly a stay might not have been a bad idea. I've even admitted I don't like the way this still is. I'm happy with the outcome, but I don't like the methods which it goes. But my main argument is, by the Constitution, all the articles, all 7 articles, spell out what the roles are for the federal government. Nowhere does it say in these articles that they are responsible for healthcare or anything like that, or relegation thereof. Everything not listed in those articles are a responsibility of what, Pisco? It would be the states, right? So
I mean, you're just not dealing with the Constitution in a serious way. Of course, if
how
the
am I
court is
not doing it with the
because you're misconstruing the court. The court isn't saying, first of all, this is not federal legislation. It's federal regulation. It's an individual right that the court, just like it's interpreting from the 14th Amendment a right to privacy, which I'm glad that Biggs respects at the very least. And
Thank you.
in so doing, it's recognizing an individual right, just like the Second Amendment. And so it's not actively imposing legislation. It's saying, notwithstanding, even if you have a 90% majority that wants to get rid of abortion, you cannot. And that's how we work with the First Amendment too. If all people in society were agreed, except for one, that we ought to ban the KKK, our principles of the First Amendment say no, notwithstanding the fact that you want to ban the KKK, you cannot. Similar thing here. We're interpreting it as an individual right. And so when you're saying, well, it's outside of the scope of what the federal government's allowed to do, that's mostly, you're thinking in the context of like congressional actions. Here, the court recognized an individual right in the case Roe v. Wade. Now, you may disagree with that case, but it's not an overstepping of federal government authority.
Well, okay, so the idea that federal law, there's actually no federal law when it comes down to Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was a court decision, and they basically said that there needs to be access. It needs to be, they want it to be safe, legal, and rare is what they constantly talk about when referring to Roe. What it did is it made sure that access was available. Now, it did not stipulate for how long. I'm not saying get rid of Roe. I'm not saying get rid of abortion, even though I would love to get rid of it. What I am saying is that these states should determine through their licensing requirements when an abortion, how long within a pregnancy can an abortion occur. I think that the federal government is overstepping by sitting there telling a state what they can determine is proper procedural medical procedures. That is it. I am not saying that the state needs to charge the woman. I'm not saying that the state needs to really put anyone in jail, but they need to hold that professional license of the professional who should be acting within the law of that state, accountable for their actions.
Why not for guns?
They do. When I carry a gun, if I happen to handle my gun improperly, I will be held accountable. Trust me, they will put me under the prison for it.
So should there be private enforcement against gun rights? I mean,
no,
would you be okay? Okay.
Have I argued one bit for private enforcement? I have told you the whole time it is nothing but garbage.
So you disagree with the court? I mean, do you agree? You disagree with the Supreme Court? You disagree with the ruling? It sounds like
I disagree with the method of the way this was written. I think it is novel. I think it is imaginative, but I think it was done wrong. So what I like the idea that abortion is limited to only the first 6 weeks, because I think that would do the least amount of damage, in my opinion, because of my stance on when life begins, which happens to be conception. But when it comes down to it, I believe that the federal government is overstepping. This needs to be a states' rights issue. If it is not listed in the Constitution as a federal deal, federal has no business enforcing it. I have a professional license. Pisco, you're about to have a professional license, and we are governed by different bodies. Mine is federal. Yours is going to be state. So there's a difference there.
Where people,
all right, we're going to pull it back to the list for this one. So
Like,
right
that
now
I'm
we have
talking to can
IRI,
hear me,
then
but
Drew,
people on my
then
stream can hear
Sansel.
me
So
now.
IRI, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, Hans, to cut you off there.
Oh, no worries. I just told
It's-
Pisco that I saw his hand as well. So just go ahead. Don't worry about it.
It's just a few people.
So
it's fine.
Sparky had brought up that you can just go to CVS and buy condoms and stuff like that, or Plan B. I think you
I'm
said
still
you can
gonna- I
take in
gotta-
the
I
first
gotta
day or two.
cover scans.
Plan B, I just looked it up in
Yeah.
Texas on a CVS is $50. Now I
You're
don't know
fine,
if you
Dylan.
remember being a teenager, but I do, and $50 was like a lot of money back when you're just
So
a
if you
kid in
can
school.
if you can find a way to have sex and then also have access to to get an abortion, I think you can find contraceptive. That's my biggest argument to that.
Well, but you had pointed up that I was being a little disingenuous with the women's centers access, but that's where you get free condoms. That's where you get free birth control. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you got to go to the drugstore and buy
Yeah.
it embarrassingly at the counter and
Oh,
sheepishly.
come
It
on,
costs
come
money.
on.
You can get
It
a lot
costs
of this
money.
for free. You can get a lot of
Wait,
this
wait,
stuff
wait,
for
wait,
free
wait.
at the Youth and Helmet Services in Texas.
All right. Okay. Let everyone please respect IRI's time. He's got a minute 30.
Can I rebut once he's done though?
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Okay.
Biggs, you can get a quick
Thank you.
response once he's finished. Just go ahead. Go ahead, IRI.
Sure. And I want to bring up an example of a young woman who had a judge's order to get an abortion. I don't know why she was pregnant, but if a judge is involved, she must have been raped or something, maybe by a family member, because a parent can give you permission for that. But she wasn't able to get into a clinic before Wednesday when the law took effect. So now what is she supposed to do? And we're just going to see story after story like that coming down the pipe with this law. So terrible to me. Now, as far as the disingenuous goes, I don't want to get too far into this, but the idea that this is called a heartbeat law, I think is disingenuous, because if you start boiling it down to what's actually happening here, and again, I don't want to take away from when life begins or anything like that. I am sensitive to that. But let's be real. This is not a heart. There's no cardiovascular system. This is a group of cells with an electric pulse. So there's a lot of disingenuous things being thrown around on this law.
Sorry, I gotta push back. First of all, a judge ordering abortion, please send me a link to that, because I believe that is a full and wholehearted overstep of their boundaries.
Well, not order, granting permission.
I must have misheard then, because I swore you said ordered an abortion. And
I
a
could have
group of
misspoke.
cells,
I could have misspoke.
a group of cells with electrical pulse, my man. That's what you are. That's what I am. Now we can discuss about development, yes, but please do not downplay what a fetus is. A fetus is a human. It just may not
No,
be
it's
developed
not.
enough to live by
Well,
itself.
it's 3 millimeters it's 3 millimeters. I mean, let's,
Ooh, insert dick joke here.
If we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. I mean,
Come on, man, it's really small. Why would it be a human?
Wait. Okay, this was not like within the scope of this. I like, if we want at some point we can have like a full abortion debate of like whether or not like it's good, bad, like da.
It's based as fuck.
I don't think that fits in particular in the scope of this conversation. So I would please request everyone kind of bring it back. So Biggs, I know you had a contention with IRI. You guys are welcome to hash that out before we go to the next person.
but we shouldn't allow. Just to be fair, then we shouldn't make references to fetuses being persons, because we shouldn't allow that if we're not going to be able to.
Okay,
discuss
so first of all,
cannot gatekeep my speech there, buddy.
hold on,
Then we
one
should
second.
respond on
So
that
for
comment,
wait,
because what you're saying is ridiculous.
I linked
All right,
something.
wait. Okay. Just for the purpose of this conversation, the people who don't think fetuses are human beings, they're welcome to say that. The people who think fetuses are human beings are welcome to say that. Please don't fight each other on it every time it's said, because then we're never gonna be able to talk about this law. Okay, that's go ahead, Biggs.
All right, so I linked something so everybody can go into our group chat, the Discord. That is what we're talking about. That is a fetus at 6 weeks. If I don't know what the Twitch stuff is, Hans, so I don't know if you want to put that on the screen or anything like that. But that's what we're talking about. At 6 weeks, that is the fetus, okay? But what I was going to say to IRI's point was that when you look at the cost of things like contraceptive and condoms and things like that versus the cost and the emotional damage of having an abortion, I think that the distinction is very clear. So I think that if obviously I want people to be informed and stuff like that, and I know that parents should be more involved and things like that, and some people don't have that, some children don't have that. Obviously teens are having sex, but I think we need to focus on those type of policies. I think that these policies that Republicans push now with the anti-abortion stuff is bad. I think we need to push as Republicans more things towards actually giving people more access to contraceptives, more access to education. But when we look at this actual photo that I put in there, I don't think that being has the same rights as the mother. To me personally, again, That's my personal feeling, and I know that it's arbitrary, but I think that Roe v. Wade is the best we're going to get, because I think that, and as technology improves, maybe we'll have other things like artificial wombs and be able to have viability be earlier and earlier. So hopefully we'll actually get rid of this whole abortion thing altogether. But what I want to say is from the right side is, and to the left people, is like, I don't understand why you guys are so against having these things being like more personal responsibility and things like that, because I don't think the whole need for abortion should even be an issue at this point. Like, I know there are things like I said with like contraceptive deserts and things like that. I think that we need to push for more things like having healthcare centers available for people around the world and around the country and stuff like that. But most of the stuff that I looked at on the thing that you that I looked at was these were like completely rural areas, so obviously they're not going to have as much access, just like they won't have access to other things like just general hospitals and general other benefits. But I do think from the right perspective, we need to change and shift the focus to preventing these from even happening to begin with.
IRI, you're welcome to briefly respond before we throw to Drew, and if your hand's up to be on the list, you're on. So.
Yeah, I want to really emphasize that it's up to each person to determine when life starts. So I respect your opinion, Sparky, and I'm not trying to challenge that, and Biggs as well, and anybody else on this panel. I mean, my bigger question is, why 6 weeks? Why not day one? You know what I mean? So it's like, it seems subjective to me. It just seems punitive. That's all.
Okay. Let me just rebut. The reason why day one is because safe, legal, and rare. Okay. If something happens like day one, there isn't even fertilization. So an abortion would not even be necessary. In fact, traditionally, it usually takes about 3 days for the egg and sperm to meet. Then it takes maybe about 12 hours for that to happen before the zygote happens. Then it still isn't even really anything until it attaches to the uterine wall. So
it's not a human life. It's not a human life at conception.
I think it is I believe it's a human life at conception. And
but
I'm
why
taking
kill it?
my
Why allow to
personal-
kill it?
I'm taking my personal opinion out of it and allowing the idea of
Oh, so you're okay with killing human
a
life?
little leeway.
With when other people think it's okay? You're okay with killing human life?
If you're gonna straw man me, Pisco, I mean,
Is
yes,
it a straw man? How is that a
no,
straw man?
hold on, dude. Yes, I do believe it is perfectly
Guys,
fine to take human life. I have done it before, and I'll do it again if I have to.
Okay. I get it. Again, like this is getting like specifically about the thing that we said like that isn't particularly helping with like about the legality of this. Again, abortion is a debate that everyone is welcome to have. We can have it next week if everyone wants. That's totally fine, but that's not the specific scope of this. If we want to do like a whole abortion debate next week, that's totally fine. For that, I specifically will bring more women. So and then we can have a hopefully better conversation on this. Just so everyone knows, we have like 4 minutes left before the general is over. Is everyone comfortable extending this by like 10 minutes? I know we're already past time, so I want to respect everyone's time. So are we comfortable saying having like maybe 14 more minutes of the general discussion before we go to our closers? Everyone good with that? All right, Biggs has voted even if he says no because he's not here. Sorry, Biggs. Okay, so list right now.
Very Texas of us.
Yeah. All right. So right now the list is everyone but Biggs. It's Drew, Sonsol, Pisco, IRI, and then Sparky. Biggs, do you want to be on the list one more time before we go to closing statements as well?
Yes, sure.
Okay, cool. All right, so Drew, 2 minutes on the clock. Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, yeah. I need to say a couple things, and they're all sort of tied to the legality. So I just want to be clear about that. So if it sounds like I'm veering off, it does go back to the legality. So I'm gonna go ahead and take Pisco's word for it that this was a little bit dishonesty with the court, just for the sake of the conversation. I have no fucking idea. And I think that really what I'm getting from those conversations is that settled laws need to be challenged the correct way rather than this weird schemey bullshit. If this needs to get overturned, let's do it the right way. I also feel like the need to do some sort of consistency check. There's a lot of weird like legal shit going on. I feel like the consistent position is if you're pro-life, the legality is that it needs to be protected from conception immediately because it's wrong. Like, and let's just be completely consistent about this for the legality of this here. When we're talking about like, oh, we need to address these issues before we do that, I think that's completely inconsistent. And if you're talking about, well, it's a states' right issue, no, it's not. If this is a right, it's a right everywhere to be protected. If it's a right for abortion, it's a right everywhere for abortion. I don't agree that we can just go state by state and decide what rights are rights in each state. Then I also think that the legislation that people are going to draft needs to be honest about this type of shit as well. If we want to protect life starting at conception, we need to stop doing this weird deceptive shit where we're saying well, 6 weeks is the line for us, but it's not really the line. It's just the way we can try to skirt around it and make abortions completely illegal, right? So let's just be honest about what the position is and stop scheming. Okay, I don't like it. Let's be consistent and stop scheming. That shit pisses
I don't think
me off,
anybody's
and
scheming.
it's not honest. Okay.
I don't think it's scheming.
Thank you, Drew. We're now going to throw it to Sansel. Go ahead.
All right. I really want to drill down on this meaningful access thing, because we're on one hand saying, yeah, no, I don't want to make it illegal, right? Obviously, it should be a legal right if someone gets raped or incest, as long as they take care of it within 6 weeks, right? But at the same time, I don't want anyone after 6 weeks to get an abortion. That obviously should be left up to the states so that they can or can't do that, right? Well, of course, we all realize that most women don't
Yeah, it's just
realize within the first
compromising,
6
really.
weeks that they
That's true.
are actually
right,
pregnant.
computer.
So
Very
it's
true.
going to get rid of the ability for most women to get the abortion. All right. So if you want to be consistent, then you're going to have to be okay with us with my thing that I said earlier, a 50,000% tax on all guns if a state wants to, right? It's not illegal to own a gun. It's just going to cost like $6,000 for a fucking handgun. And if you're okay with that, well then, you know what? At that point, I guess I can't.
We should
argue
charge
with
the
you.
bullets.
You're very. Oh no! All the bullets are also, those have a 100,000% tax. All right, bud.
That's a Chris Rock sketch, by the way. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Didn't know. So, and then the second thing, you're saying that if it's not explicitly laid out in the Constitution that someone has the right
try
to
to
do
be
a certain
funny
action,
and get fucking lost.
that goes against literally everything that I've ever heard again about the Constitution, because it lays out what sorts of things the government can't do to you. It's not what things that you're allowed to do. Otherwise, we wouldn't be allowed to do most things. All right. So, I mean, if it's because the Constitution doesn't explicitly say people are allowed to have abortions, that's a hell of a hill to die on if you're also into the Second Amendment.
I'm glad you laughed. I'm glad I can provide comedy to somebody.
Individual citizens are allowed
it's
to
really
own any
pretty,
gun that they fucking want,
it's
and
a
how
rough, dry
how much
crowd in
ammo they
here
want,
right
or
now.
anything else like that. All right.
With this panel.
So if you want to be consistent,
Sparky's
you have
getting
to
ready.
bite the bullet.
Oh, yeah, Sparky, get ready.
As we know it today.
Get him,
Let's be
Sparky.
consistent. Let's be consistent. Okay. So, do you know what the difference between? Do you know what a right is versus a commodity? Do you really want to go down this route?
About?
Because no right has any physical, actual existence. When you are buying a service, you have a right to that access. Maybe when it comes down to a gun, you have the right to own one. That doesn't mean you get one. When it comes down to it, what is abortion? It is physical. That means you can touch it, you can smell it, you can taste it. And my God, you shut your hole right now. Let me talk. Let me talk.
I don't understand what you're saying.
My God, what I am saying is rights are abstract. They are ideas. Speech is free.
Hans is
The
like,
right
oh my
to own
God,
a
what did
gun
I do?
is the right to own one. That doesn't mean they give you a gun. They cannot force you to house and quarter soldiers. They cannot. This is not about you have the right to get this service. When it comes down to it,
So
look,
funny.
Pisco said it was 14th Amendment. Due process is what Roe v. Wade was. That means that I don't really. I'm gonna have to go back through that whole deal to understand it fully, because I thought it was about privacy this whole time, and so I was
It is
misinformed.
about privacy.
So
It is.
the
so
government
a state can make it illegal to sell guns?
No,
Wait,
they can't make it illegal to sell guns. They're not making it illegal to sell abortion, because that's what happens. Abortions are sold. It's not like they go, you get abortion, you get abortion. This ain't freaking Oprah, dude. When it comes down to it, it is a doctor who is performing a service, and you are not guaranteed to his labor for free. I know you socialists love slavery. But come on,
what is this,
man.
Hans? You letting this happen?
You're not even addressing what I said.
I can't
So
save him.
with
I
the
can't save him.
Wait, Sparky.
Very quick. Are you
No,
okay with the
Sansel,
500,000?
Sansel, you will speak. I promise. Okay, Sparky had a lengthy response to Sansel. Sansel gets to respond. I was treating this as a back and forth. Sansel will get to respond from this. Pisco will get to respond to this. I'll give Sparky a brief 30-second last word, and then we are going back down the list to Pisco. All right? No one else talk. If anyone interrupts someone else during this when they're not supposed to be speaking, they will be server muted until I call upon them again. So, Sansel, Sparky, I'm watching you. Watching you too, Pisco. Sansel only. Go.
So literally nothing that you said addressed what what I said, like at all. Not one word that you said addressed what I. Maybe if you rearranged them in a certain way, like we could maybe get in the direction of addressing what I said. But all I want to know is, are you cool with the 500,000% tax on all guns and ammunition that I want to impose because I live in a liberal state and I'm the governor of California and I want to get rid of all guns. So you have to pay a 500,000% tax on that gun. Is that meaningful access to you?
I've
'Cause it's
already
not
mentioned.
illegal.
I've already mentioned that abortion should be a states' rights issue, actually voted on by members of the state to determine. But what I was saying in response to your previous thing, because you're trying to commodify owning guns, yeah, they cost money, and so you're wanting to add a tax. This isn't a tax added on to actually paying for an abortion. Abortions are not free. Therefore, abortions are not rights. You can own a gun. Owning it is free. Buying it is a different animal. When you require someone else's labor in order for something to exist,
All right.
you are actually putting value on that, right? Okay, so the abortion does have value. That's why they charge like $10,000 for the abortion to happen, because the doctor has performed a service. The access, the fact that it's there, just because it is there, that is where your access comes from. The means to actually purchase said service is a different story altogether.
So
And
you
that's what I
support the
was
tax.
getting at. Go
All
for
right.
it, man. If the people vote for it, good.
All right.
Hell yeah,
Son-
let's fucking
wait,
go.
wait,
Second
all right,
Amendment,
all right,
BTFO'd. All right, I'm done.
All right,
That's all I have to say. Like,
okay.
obviously, he's
That's so
fine with
funny.
getting rid of meaningful
Sansoy,
access
yeah,
to
like
the rights that
Sansoy.
we have. So
Funny.
if you want to criticize the government, you have to buy a $10,000 coupon. If you want to write an op-ed in a fucking newspaper, but you still have access to that First Amendment right. If you want to buy a gun, here's a $10,000 tax that you have to pay up front, and then 500,000% for the actual cost. Like, yeah, like meaningful access doesn't fucking matter as long as you have the right on paper.
Taxes.
All
Poll
right.
taxes.
Or-
So poll taxes are cool too.
That's what you. That's where
all
it will end
taxes
up
are
going,
theft.
and you know
all
it.
right.
Oh my
right.
God.
All
Okay.
I'm
taxes
saying
are
you're in
theft.
favor
All
of
right.
that. That's not what I'm in favor of.
All right. So we're now going to move to Pisco with his question for Sparky. That I'm going to give them a hard limit of 3 minutes for this back and forth. Then I'm going to stop it. And then it's Pisco's turn for his original statement of what he wanted to talk to. So Pisco, Sparky, we're letting Pisco start. Sparky, please do not start speaking until Pisco finishes like the specific point. So Pisco, go ahead.
Sparky is lost in the woods of his second-rate and sophomoric analysis of the legal issues. I mean, the abortion right can be just as thought of as a negative right with respect as gun control, or indeed the First Amendment. It's the right to be free from government intervention with respect to your abortion, just like the gun right is the right to be free from government intervening in your ability to have a gun. Just because, as the First Amendment is the right to be free from government interference in speech. The commodity distinction or the ownership distinction doesn't map on either, because there are rights totally untailed to ownership. So that doesn't distinguish gun rights or abortion or the First Amendment of abortion. This is not how we think of the right to abortion. The right to abortion is a freedom to be free from government intrusion, just like these other rights. And so I don't know where Sparky is, but he's clearly not read up on or really understands the notion of individual rights in this country and how they work in the law.
You don't need
All right,
to ad hom though, just so you know.
All right, Sparky, you're welcome to respond. We have 2 minutes left on this clock. You guys are welcome to go at it. Go ahead.
First of all, I'm a layman, not a legal, not even trained in law. The fact that I upset y'all so much just by pointing out when Sonzel sits there and starts talking about, oh, we're gonna put huge taxes on things I don't like. This isn't
Proto,
raising the
retro,
tax
all the
on,
lawyers
on
are pretty
abortions
bad
by
overall
any means.
anyways. I
It
think
is
they
just
get a bad
limiting
rap, but
the amount of time that someone can actually receive a service. A service in itself is not a right. Now, Pisco, even you should admit that. Rights are free. Rights mean that the government cannot intrude, but they also they can't
not
take them
necessarily,
away, but they can't charge you for them either. As for the most part that I understand. In fact, I think that background checks are actually illegal. I don't think they're constitutional at all. That's another discussion altogether. I'd love to get rid of the NFA. And yes, I think felons who have actually served their time should be able to own guns again and vote and everything else. But hey, no one wants that conversation. But please go on. Ad hom me some more, my man.
I was calling your analysis stupid, but if you consider that an ad hom, then I guess I was just stating my opinion.
Okay,
Brother, I love you.
Drew, I already said no one else fucking talk except
Oh
for
my
those
God.
people. Shut the fuck up. It's not your turn. You will get your moment. All
Don't
right,
make him
Pisco.
bust out the rubber suit, okay, Drew? We
Flex,
don't want to see Hans
flex.
get the rubber
Pisco,
suit.
Sparky, you got 35 seconds. If not, I think this is good. All right, cool. We're going to now move to the last 4 people on the list, which in this case is Pisco, then IRI, then Sparky, then Biggs. Then we're going to go to closing statements. So, Pisco, 2 minutes on the clock. Whatever you want to say, go ahead.
This has been a very successful panel. We've had everyone on this panel in unanimous agreement that the Supreme Court opinion was wrong. And so I think that that's a great moment, and to recognize that regardless of whether or not you think Roe v. Wade should be overturned, not like this, and certainly not opening this Pandora's box. I really want to address now the vaccine and pro-life hypocrisy that I'm seeing here. Because on the one hand, and I think it's relevant because you should be careful not to make a rod for your own back when you're discussing these kinds of things. If you are against vaccine mandates, if you are against mask mandates to a certain degree, then you're in favor of privacy rights. Where do you think that's going to go if the court now considers that, you're going to be back to the days of Jacobson, where rational basis review for these kinds of laws? And also, I think you should be worried about the priorities of the Republican Party and whether or not they're being true to the pro-life mantra that they hold. They're willing to make trade-offs for rights all the time with respect to privacy, in terms of not instituting mandatory vaccines and not instituting mask mandates and these kinds of regulations. And they do so because they want to protect privacy rights. That's their stated goal. But it seems like in the case of the abortion, that trade-off, that analysis is totally out of the window. And I want someone who both is against abortion rights and against vaccine mandates to square the difference. How can you not recognize the clear and obvious parallel between the trade-offs for life on one end and the privacy right on the other? Square that circle if you can.
All right. Thank you, Pisco. We're going to go to IRI, and then Sparky, and then Biggs. IRI, take it away.
Yeah, I'll keep it super short. I've said this a few times, but I really want to hammer this point just for the people out there that when life starts is up to you, because there's people out there that could have a miscarriage 1 week into their pregnancy and they're devastated. And I totally understand that and respect that. So again, I don't want that message out there that I'm describing this as something that's not life. That's up to you to determine. But I was just talking about the labeling of it as a heartbeat bill. And there is no cardiovascular system, and it is, you know what I mean? It is what it is. So that's all.
All right. Thank you, IRI. Sparky.
Of course, IRI, me and you were going to disagree there, okay? And respectfully. Look, as far as I'm concerned, I think life actually begins at the actual time when, sperm and egg meet, and others don't. I understand there's a difference, and I know that is an important difference to some people. A cardiovascular system, the reason why the heartbeat bill is because most people determine things like a sign of life would be a heartbeat. That is the beginning of life to many people in this process. Like I said, I really wish people would have dared to actually explore the idea of the states' rights argument. I think it is actually the best argument. The fact that it states in the Constitution that they actually talk about the rights, what the federal government protects, and blah blah blah, and those are what your rights are. This is a procedure. It should be governed, I believe, by the actual licensing bureau, which would be the state in this case, and therefore the population of that state should have a say in it, instead of a bunch of representatives within that state making that decision for them. Let's get a legitimate down the road, hey, where? I think this is something that I think even on the left, something that y'all could agree with. I know that that's a risk either way. I could lose and they'd be like, oh, we want abortions up till 18 or 19 weeks. Or y'all could, or you could win and they make that decision. But look, I think this is this is the healthy side of the conversation. I firmly believe is where it stands. And I was disappointed that we have some great minds here. We really do, and that's not me. Some great minds here that I wish would have engaged on that. I'd have been so much happier if that would have happened. Yeah, let's roll into it.
Hans, just want to say real quick, it has been addressed by this panel, and I'll address it explicitly in my closing.
All right. Thank you, Pisco. All right, Biggs. Last statement of the general before we
I'm
move
ready to go to
into
closing statements.
are you ready to go? All right, cool. All right, so we're gonna start with Drew, then Biggs, then IRI, then Pisco, then Sonsel, and then finishing with Sparky. Again, I know there's stuff that you all want to like debate about and do different things. You're welcome to do that after this immediately. If you want to do that, say like on your own streams, something like that. If you want to potentially schedule a more specific, say one-on-one debate, like whether it's say like Pisco and Sparky, if you guys want to hash out more stuff.
Hans has
like,
the best chess clock debate, so if anybody wants to do one-on-ones, they're amazing. So Hans, I highly recommend you do that.
Yeah, we can set that up later. But so 80 seconds on the clock. Drew, and don't worry, we're gonna do like you can shout yourself out at the end and stuff. So don't worry about doing it during this. Please focus on addressing the like actual prompt in question during the closing statement. That's just a change from last time because most time people would spend like half the time plugging, but I prefer people's final thoughts on the actual issue. So Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to use this time to quickly kind of address what Pisco was talking about with vaccinations and abortion and the contradiction there. I think that to me, the issue with the privacy is that pro-lifers, from my point of view, don't view privacy as essentially anything to do with abortion. Because if you believe it's a life, privacy doesn't affect whether or not you can end it. And when you're talking about medical decisions with vaccines, it's a completely separate thing. There's another thing that you're talking about, a difference in degree. So when you're talking about vaccines, not getting vaccinated, you are putting others at risk. So there's a concern there, but you are not guaranteed to kill another person like you are in the case of abortion. So there's a couple reasons why the analogy breaks down, in my view. Overall, I think that the gist of this conversation is basically everybody agrees that there's some fucky shit going on with this stuff. Whether or not we agree with abortion or not, this seems like the wrong way to go about it. My view is basically if they can skirt the judicial stuff through this way, probably just close the loophole at the lower courts and get rid of this. This seems like a bad precedent to set. So yeah, there we go. See ya.
All right. Thank you, Drew. Biggs.
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning, I think that abortion is terrible. I don't think anybody should be put in a position to have that. That's why I think we should focus on policy and legislation that helps prevent unwanted pregnancies to begin with. But when it comes to actual abortions, I think that the government should stay out of things. That's why I'm a libertarian. I don't want the government to make decisions for people. And I think that this bill is just abhorrent. I think that putting people in, basically deputizing people with bounties to go out and rat on their neighbors and their friends and possibly ruin people's lives when they're already in a very vulnerable position is just terrible. I think that's just, this whole bill is just awful. There's other ways to go about it. And I think that right now, I think the left has the upper hand on this. So I want to see the Republicans push for more common sense things, like pushing for more more access to contraceptives and healthcare and things like that, and education. I think that's where we need to focus on our things. But I do want to say that that people, if you have an issue, go see your doctor, check it out, and see what you need to do, because I think that that these type of situations need to be done between the person and their doctor, and not be involving the government at all.
Thank you, Biggs. And sorry for not giving you the 30-second warning. That was my fault. I was like responding.
I still love you. Don't worry, buddy.
All right. All right. IRI, go ahead.
Yeah. I think
you got COVID. Oh no, man, that's
thing
shitty.
Is so bad that's what's going to get this thing shot down. The fact that the Supreme Court allowed this law to go in effect for even 1 minute, and ruin people's lives already is really tragic. And we should all be looking at the Supreme Court in a different way.
I hope you feel better, bud, man. That sucks.
Packing and all this stuff, and I don't think any of that.
I hope
is
you're not
where
having
we need
too
to go.
bad of symptoms.
But I think this shows the desperation of the GOP in Texas right now, and in general in America. In 2012, Obama lost by 16 points. In 2016, Hillary lost by about 9. And Biden lost Texas in 2020 by less than 6. So the writing's on the wall for the GOP, and they're just trying to appeal to their most fervent members of their base with frivolous laws like this that they probably never even thought would be enacted. They're probably as shocked as any of us on this panel right now.
Onions.
But when you chase the car, eventually you catch it. And with abortion being pretty popular in America right now, up to 60% of people support legal abortions. I think politically, the GOP has handed a gift to the Democrats. And if the law doesn't piss you off, then the ramifications of that gift to the Democrats surely will in 2022.
Thank you, IRI, and based Dark Knight reference with the Joker and chasing cars. Love it. Pisco, 80 seconds. Go ahead, buddy.
Real quick on the Drew comparison, I think it's unavailing because, frankly speaking, the trade-off is life in both cases. Even if you consider a fetus to be a life, it's some substantive right to do something related to the medicine in exchange for life. And the same thing with masking and vaccine. And so I think the comparison, even if you consider a fetus a life, is on point. On the question of the 10th Amendment, it's not really addressing anything, Aircraft Sparky, because the first principal question is there in fact a fundamental right to abortion? And if the answer is yes, then it's true of all fundamental rights that states can intervene. And we just don't look to the 10th Amendment, which, by the way, isn't a substantive source of law. It's just an acknowledgement of what we already know, is that Congress is a government of limited powers. That 10th Amendment is really focused on the federal government in its role as legislature or role as policymaker, not really in the role of fundamental rights secured by the Constitution. And so your mode of analysis is just totally wrong. I'm glad that unanimously everyone agrees that the Supreme Court did the wrong thing in its decision. I will say that this law probably won't stand under Texas state law. There are a lot of problems with the law, universal standing problems, all sorts of things wrong with this law that I expect it, to be struck down eventually. But I will differ with my friend. I'm really important in saying that I am in favor of court reform. I recognize what the Republican senators did in 2010s to be court packing, worst form of court packing, because it only had to go through one house, not two houses in the president, and it affected the partisan balance. And so I'm very much in favor of court reform and increasing the number of Supreme Court justices and lower federal court judges to combat the court packing of the Republican senators. And with that, I'll end. Thank you so much, Hans. A great panel. I think you're the best host on this platform.
Pisco, really appreciate it. And if you ever want to do a court packing debate, I'm happy to host that as well. I'd love to see how that turns out. Sansel, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad that we found out that substantive rights or substantive access to rights are not like all that important to some conservatives, as long as they're on the Constitution. That's like super cool, and everyone's happy with that. So that's like a pretty cool thing that we took out of this. I actually think that the argument for abortion rights is really one-sided in terms of the legality, but when you get into the morals of it, I actually understand where conservatives are coming from. So I find it really difficult when they're very, very much against the government and interfering with their lives. They're so for it in this case. But I mean, that's a separate concept. I'm glad that we are all in agreement that this is unconstitutional, and we all recognize that there are problems with the especially like the bounty hunter and stuff. I think that conservatives agreeing with people on the left on that part is really good.
Thank you, Sansel. All right, Sparky, 80 seconds. Last word, buddy. Go ahead.
All right. So look, this whole deal, everyone here on this panel will actually go, no, this is kind of garbage. I understand what SCOTUS did. I actually kind of understand why they did it. I think like what Pisco said, I think they probably should have done a stay, but no, they're playing little games. I don't know why. I don't know their motives. Don't care. I think this will get overturned into lower courts, but I do think that it does actually need to go before the lower courts. It needs to actually be delve into. That way we don't see this come up against other things, right? Because this is a slippery slope. I will admit that. Merit was not decided. There was no touch of merit on this. This was basically said, we are not going to touch it. It needs to go to the lower courts, and they kicked it out. They really didn't make a decision other than not to perform a stay. I firmly believe Roe v. Wade was an overstep by federal courts impeding on states' rights. Sansel does. Everyone, Pisco disagrees, and there's other people. Okay, cool.
I don't
we need
eat
to have that
onions like
conversation
apples,
one day.
by the way.
And
But my sister used to when she was a
beautiful
kid.
straw man at
And
the
she
end.
didn't even have COVID.
Look, thank you all, and Hans, yes, most pleasant, best panel on Twitch ever. best panel ever. Look, everyone needs to be subbing to this man down at the very bottom.
Oh, give me money! All right,
yes, give him money. Give him lots of money.
I'm sorry, Sparky, you ran out of time. All right, we're gonna go back to the list now.
Turn him into a capitalist
for all the different plugs and stuff. So Sparky, feel free to plug yourself, and everyone get ready for that. You're welcome to drop your links in chat while you're plugging yourself. Try and keep it short. I'm not going to time you, but like just don't do a speech. And I know you all think I'm the best mod ever, but so as much as I love taking 6 guys at the same time, you don't only to suck my dick. I really appreciate it in advance. So go ahead, Sparky.
We were just returning the favor, but hey. No, when it comes down to it, no. Thank you. Look, I am probably the most hated person on this panel. Probably in Hans's stream. I don't know. I'm not watching your chat, buddy. But look, I am Aircraft Sparky. Please come over to Twitch. Come check me out. See what I'm doing. I draw cartoons. I do these panels. And, I do political commentary on YouTube as well. So go check me out at Twitch or YouTube. Aircraft Sparky. Check me out. Give me the opportunity. I'm about to start a live action cartoon like Space Ghost Coast to Coast. It's going to be based as hell, regardless of what side you're on, because it's not going to be straight political. It is going to be comedy. So I hope to see y'all once I start that. Thank you so much. And thank everyone on this wonderful panel for a mostly peaceful yet sometimes fiery discussions. Love it.
Thank you, Sparky. Sansel.
Yeah, I'm Sansel. I do political debates. I play games very badly. People like to make fun of me while I play my games. So if you like to roast streamers with few repercussions, come on over to my stream. I do this full time, so you'll usually see me online around like 2 or after 2 p.m. Central, and yeah, I'm gonna
Erica Sparky, thank you for following, buddy. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
So
you're amazing. Thank you.
Everyone help Sansel get part. He's a great guy, and if you're considering subbing to me,
who did we lose?
Don't need it, sub to Sansel instead. He deserves it.
Oh, Puck Flicker, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. You're amazing.
Now I don't know where everyone
yeah,
started.
Sparky's
Pisco,
awesome.
are you still there? Where'd you, we get him at the end. IRI, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for running a wonderful panel, Hans, and thank you to everybody on here. It was a pleasure chatting with you all. I think it's important that we leave it on a positive note and that people can see that we can disagree and walk away as friends. That's important. It trickles down to all our communities, and so I appreciate everybody just being professional and great people. Again, I go by I'm Really Important. I talk electoral politics on my stream, mostly focus on what's going on Capitol Hill. Watch a lot of C-SPAN. We've got these 2 sexy infrastructure bills that are about to come down the pipe. Even if Joe Manchin tries to stand in the way, don't worry, it's all Pelosi and them. They expect this stuff. So I'm very optimistic. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening. We would love to see you guys in our channel and come hang out with us and learn about your government. So thanks again, Hans. I really appreciate you inviting me.
I really appreciate you come on. Everyone, make sure to follow IRI. He does some of the best commentary, and he really gets in the weeds on stuff that most political commentators don't do. And more people should follow his actual responses compared to, say, people just reacting to dumb PragerU videos. He deserves more attention. All right, Pisco, welcome back. Go ahead, plug yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm
okay.
Pisco95. I'm a law channel, though I'm not a lawyer yet. So if you like that kind of analysis or whatever, we literally will just read opinions. Actually, before this ruling last week, we read Roe v. Wade, and we talked about some of its problems too. And it's not the most accepted case, and there are some problems with that opinion. But those kinds of analyses are the ones that I sort of focus on. And so if you like that, come follow me. Thanks again for having me on. I think it was like a wonderful panel, organized well, and again, I love this format, and I'll take any opportunity to do that format again.
I'll definitely keep that in mind. We love having you. All right, Biggs.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Hans. The best panel host, Pokemon streamer, just all around amazing guy. Thank you so much for having me. IRI, some of the best, even though I don't agree with you on all your takes, some of the best political commentary and analysis around on Twitch. Everybody give him a follow, give him a sub. He's amazing. Pisco, one of the best and most consistent law people I know on this stream. I don't normally like lawyers, but Pisco, You're an amazing dude. I thank you so much. I've seen you. We've been on stuff in the past, and I've seen you in other discords and such. You're amazing, Sansol. I love talking with you. I know you hop into all kinds of discords all over the place to find content. Everything from drama to high fucking analysis. This guy's great. Has great gaming. Give him a follow. Give him a sub. He's awesome. Push for that partner subs and all that stuff. You're amazing. Erica Sparky, thank you so much. We had a conversation last night. I thought it went great. I thought tonight went great. I thought we did very well as the conservative representation on panels. You guys are amazing. Drew, I don't know much about you. I think I've seen you on some panels in the past, but I think this guy has some good takes. I'd like to hear more from you. And I don't know if you've got a channel or whatever, but if you do, when you shout it out, everybody follow him. You guys are amazing. You can find me at Biggs8500 on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Give me a follow, give me a shout out, whatever you want. But these people are amazing. These panels are awesome. I love everybody here. Thank you so much for this amazing content. All of you, I know IRI is going to do probably a review of this panel probably tomorrow or in the next couple of days. So I look forward to that. Thank you all. You guys are all amazing. Bless you all and have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Biggs. Everyone, like I said, Biggs is one of my favorite people. Always
I
brings
love
the
you too.
optimism, always brings the game, and as you can see, the single greatest hype man in all of Twitch politics. Really appreciate. We should have just let Biggs shout all of us out. He did better than any of us ever could have. So last in line, Drew, tell us about yourself and where people can find you.
Yeah, my name's Drew. I'm not really gonna plug myself.
All right,
I'm just gonna make two things.
Oh, thank you so much,
if you need help
Cat2,
with
for
your mental
following. I
health, please
appreciate it.
talk
You're
to
amazing.
someone.
Thank you so
I've
much.
been depressed before.
Thank
and I
you.
would have saved a lot of pain.
You guys are all
reaching out for
awesome.
help. You're not alone. There are people out there who want to help you.
Sorry
Also,
about not taking
if you aren't vaccinated,
self-registration at
please
the
get
state level. Only
vaccinated. Not
continuing the
because
argument
you have
for
to.
decades
No one's
more. Your
forcing you to,
solution
because
of
it's
the
the
more
right thing to do
education
to
access
protect
comes
yourself,
to only
your family,
kicks
and your
the
country.
can further down the road.
And also,
yeah, I
thanks,
guess.
Hans,
I mean,
for the invitation.
I don't know.
This was really fun. And thank
I'd
you
like to have a
all the guests I
conversation
had. I'm not
about
gonna go
that
through everybody
more
as their hype
one-on-one,
man.
maybe if you have a chance. But
I really
thank you so much for
appreciate
hanging
y'all.
out. I really do
came out
appreciate it.
knowing a lot more than I went in with, so I really appreciate y'all's time.
I really appreciate all of you being here. Thank you so much. I thought this was a really excellent panel. It got a little spicy at the end, which is always totally fine. But I think overall, this was a very informative conversation on both topics. And I really appreciate all of you being such a good group and playing off each other so well and respecting each other's time and just allowing the conversation to flow so well. So I really appreciate all of you. Chat, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this evening. If you like this, make sure you follow all these amazing people and make sure you follow me because I do something based like this every single Saturday. So if you like this, make sure you come back and see it next time. I'm going to raid into Prime Kai's, who I know is doing an open panel very, very soon because I'm going to hop off. I'm going to drive to a liquor store. I did some beer tasting last night, and there was this amazing... There's like an amazing vanilla porter that I'm gonna pick up like a little case of, and we're gonna have a great night. Might show up on Primes later.
Awesome.
Little bit tipsy, and I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my Labor Day weekend. And I hope
as
all
long
of
as you get the
do as
apron
well.
on.
I will get the apron. Everyone have a lovely evening. You're all based. You're all poggers, and I hope to see all of you during my regular streams and during my next stuff. Thank you all so much for being here, and you're all awesome.
See ya.
Thank you.
All right, I'll catch you guys later.
Thanks,
If you
Hansel.
guys want
See
to
ya.
hop over to my channel or my what do you call it, Discord, y'all are welcome to have an after party there.
Right on. I might do that. I've gotta do my gotta talk to my guys,
My
guys and
peeps.
gals.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, but yeah. Hey, thanks. It was fun tonight, Sansel. Hans, my man. Thank you for having me. I know I wasn't your first choice, but I hope I'm not your last.
Well, no. It wasn't that you were my last choice. I had like the conservative roster already filled. Someone
No,
canceled.
I got that, man. I got that.
Someone canceled on me last minute, but seriously, thank you so much for stepping in. I really, really appreciate it. I think the panel would have been considerably worse and considerably.
I
less
live in
diverse
Ohio,
terms
but
of
I'm not a
opinions.
Buckeye. Sorry, I was talking my chat. I didn't mean to push the button.
Well, no, I hope I brought a perspective that maybe wouldn't have been brought otherwise.
I think you definitely succeed in that. So 1 second, I'm just gonna send off my Raider.
All right, I'm gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna go to the bathroom and then I'm gonna hop on and maybe talk with some other people. So we'll see. Be right back. Peace. I had a lot of fun too, man.
in this idea, if everybody volunteers for these institutions to exist, if we all volunteer, technically I would say that it's public, right? Because the majority of the public, people, volunteer to engage in this.
I've got a
system
Michigan
and prop the
State
system up in
shirt
order
on
for it to
tonight.
exist. I would say that it's public.
Michigan State.
So would you say like Walmart's
Spartans.
public?
No.
So, but people are volunteering.
I do live
to
in
buy
Ohio,
shit there and prop it up.
So.
Well, no, it's different. It's different.
Really? What? Really?
Because
Why?
when we're talking about a governmental structure, right? Again, this all depends on if in your ideal monarchist society are we having elections? Because
No,
people
I would
don't.
say no. There's no
It's
election.
Walmart.
People don't vote.
It's
People
what
don't directly vote.
Looter. It's
who
Wal.
runs
It's Walmart. It's Walmart state.
No, it's not.
It's Walmart state.
No.
Why
it's
not?
Why not?
But why not?
Do I really need to
Yeah.
answer this question?
Yes, I want
This
you. I
seems
want
like
to
a
hear your
really
answer.
dumb question. Walmart's not a state.
It is a dumb
period.
question, but he's trying to make a point here,
Why-
right?
Okay, so then we'll just skip
Yeah,
the answer
why?
and get to your point.
No, I want to hear your answer. Why is it another state?
Why is it not a state? Because people don't elect we don't elect who runs Walmart. We don't elect who our manager is at Walmart, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Generally,
Great.
right? The concept of a state is that
Mhm.
there's some of it is there's a social contract, but also we all technically agree to live under this system, and we vote on officials who run our government in a democratic society. Yeah. But with
the thing is
Walmart,
that-
we don't.
So
do
are
this.
you saying that?
With Walmart, we
are
just
you-
go and purchase.
so
the
are you
product.
saying
we don't-
that-
we
are
have
you
no
s-
decision-making process in who actually runs the company?
Are you saying that the current system it's voluntary, so we live in anarchy right now? Is that the argument you're making?
To an extent, it's voluntary. Yeah.
So if Big Al were to choose to not pay taxes tomorrow, what would happen to him? And let's say he pays no taxes, right? He still works from home, right? But he's not taking advantage of anything that the U.S. does that any other country is doing.
Obviously,
If
the
he
IRS would
chooses-
come after him, right? Obviously, the IRS would come after
Why?
him for sure.
Why if it's voluntary? Is it voluntary then? It's not voluntary.
Well, would a monarchist society? I mean, first of all, the problem that I have with this idea as well, right, is that an individual can be benefiting from everything that exists in a monarchist society, but not actually contribute
so
to
we
it at
tax-
all, which is a
Sure.
problem.
Should we go tax Italian? So we tax Italian citizens because they're benefiting from things that the United States does.
No, that's different.
Why? Why not?
It's different. It's different, right? Because in our society,
Why?
we elect people. We elect people who make
Italians don't elect
decisions
people,
for
and they
us.
benefit from our.
We
They benefit
elect
from the
people
stuff
who
that we
make
do.
decisions
Should we
for us,
tax them?
right? So if you don't want our taxpayer dollars to go towards Italians, I would encourage you to elect officials who would disagree with providing our taxpayer dollars to Italians.
Yeah,
right?
but they still benefit from the. They still benefit from the satellites. Should we tax them then because they're benefiting from the satellites? Should we tax the French too because they're
So
benefiting?
again, I would just say the same thing, right?
Satellites too.
If
that
you
we are
disagree
using
with
to
our
throw taxes?
satellites, if you disagree with our satellites flying over France or helping the French, then I would say go and vote for officials who have a platform that say we're not going to have our satellites fly over France anymore.
No.
We'll
But
help the French."
you're making the argument that Big Ov is gonna benefit from something indirectly, right? Or we're gonna benefit from something indirectly, so therefore we should be forced to pay taxes. I'm making the argument that yes, if that is true, then the French and the Italians and everybody else should be paying us taxes because they benefit from the satellites.
No.
So should they be enforced to pay taxes too? Yes, they do. They do benefit from satellites. Literally everybody does in the
I
globe.
just explained to you, right? that
No,
if
you
don't
didn't. You
want
just
our
said it's
system to
different.
help-
Ha ha ha, and you just moved.
Did you not listen to anything that I just said?
You
for
said
the
it's
last 30
different and just
seconds?
moved on.
No, I explained to you, and I've already said it twice, so I'll say it a third time, right? In a democratic society,
Mm-hmm.
if you feel like people are benefiting from our system that shouldn't be benefiting from it, you have the opportunity to elect officials
Mm-hmm.
in local elections that have platforms that say we
Mm-hmm.
don't want our taxpayer dollars or our shared capital
Sure.
to help these
In
people.
this
I guess the question
Change
I have
the
is,
system, right?
I guess the question I
Wait,
have is,
big up. Let me. So, sure. Give me a second. And I can say, sure, you can make that same argument, and I'm gonna make the same argument. You guys should vote as a democracy to make it sure that all your taxpayers' money are not benefiting Big Alf if he doesn't want to pay taxes.
Well, yes, and actually we have done this, right? Which is why we have the IRS that recognizes that if you're not going to pay taxes in our society, that you're going to get punished for it because we don't want people who are American citizens benefiting.
Sure,
from
but why don't we
dollars
do that to
without paying
Italians and
taxes.
French and Spanish? They benefit from our system without paying taxes. Why do they have the right to benefit from the system but Big Alf doesn't?
So, for example, what I would say here is that Italian citizens don't benefit from I mean,
Yes,
in
they
a
do.
very loose sense, they would benefit from our infrastructure, but generally, how your taxpayer dollars
but they
impact your
do.
local community, Italians aren't benefiting from that. Our government recognizes that if we have satellites that fly over Italy or fly over France, that this is going to increase relations with foreign countries, it's going to increase trade, other countries are going to want to work with us more,
Yeah.
and that with this trade, it's going to benefit
Why
our
wouldn't that be the
citizens
same
more.
for Big Alf?
What do you mean? Why
Why
wouldn't
wouldn't
it
be
be the
the,
same
why
for Big
wouldn't
Alf?
be the same with Big? Yeah.
In what context?
So you think the Big? So if Big Alf were to say, "Listen, I'm not gonna pay your taxes. I'm gonna live in my own house. I'm just gonna use your satellite." Do you think he should be and make money online? Do you think he should be forced to pay taxes?
Yeah. If he
Why?
lives if he lives in the borders of the United States and he's an American citizen, then yeah, you should pay taxes, absolutely.
Why?
Why? Do I need to
Why
explain to
and
you
how
why
is
we
that not
tax
coercive?
people? Do I need to explain to you why
No, what you
taxation
need to explain
exists?
to me why is it not coercive? You keep saying that it's not coercive. I'm asking you why is it not
I'm
coercive?
not saying that it's
Why
not
does
coercive. I'm actually
why do
saying that it's coercive
why
and
do
it's a
foreign
good
people
thing.
get to?
I'm saying that
Okay, so it is
taxing
coercive, right?
American citizens is coercive and it's a good thing. Yeah, that's my argument.
Okay, so
I
why
guess
should
my argument
why
would
should he?
be my argument would be if this system is so fucking
No,
great.
no. At least he's admitting that it's coercive. Yeah.
I'm just saying if this system is so great, if it's so wonderful, if you support it and everybody else supports it, therefore we have to force people to pay into it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is it really that great
What's
if we
so
have to
great
force
about it?
people to
I'm
pay
not
into it?
saying that it's a perfect system, but I'm saying that it's a system, right? In order for the system to maintain power, laws and structures and governmental institutions bring order to the chaos, right?
And
And having a
making the
centralized
argument,
authority
Sure.
that can project power, right,
and I'm
is
making the
incredibly
argument that
important
a
to
free
maintaining stability.
society is a better system.
What do you mean by free society?
Sure, but if wait,
Volunteerism.
Luder, if you're Big Alf, no, you actually made a good point. If the society is so good, why do you have to force people into being in it? If it's so
Because the
good, why do you
state
have to
has
force
project
people into being in it?
force. Because the state has to project force to maintain authority, right?
Because it's not so
We
good.
have to have the threat of violence to maintain power. And I've never claimed
Got
that
it,
our
got it.
institutions and system is perfect, right?
Got it.
But it is a system.
So your system is so good that you need to put
a
gun on people's head in order to keep it.
Well, so
Got
the
it.
thing
So your
is
system is so good. It's so
that the
good
idea
that you need to put a gun in people's head
No,
in
no,
order
no,
to
no,
keep it. That
Lucas.
sounds
The thing is that the idea of a good system or a bad system is incredibly subjective, right? Not everybody that lives
Yes.
within our borders may agree that our system is good, right? But we have a centralized authority that is able to project power to maintain the system, for better or worse, because we recognize that having a centralized authority that is able to project power is better, even if it has problems and it isn't perfect and does horrible things, in our opinion. That system is better than just complete chaos and anarchy.
Isn't that system a government?
Yes, or a state. Yeah,
No, he's talking about the United States. Yeah.
yeah. And this. Yeah, we're talking about the United States.
Yeah, and then the argument that we keep making is it's like if your system is so good, why do you have to force people into being a part of it?
Because not everybody agrees with the system, so you need to coerce people to participate in the system in order for it to
So you have
exist.
to violate rights.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm saying that it's a good thing. Yeah.
That's a good thing, violating rights. Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to go violate your rights. I don't give a shit about your rights because I feel my system's better. I'm going to violate your rights.
I don't care
Well,
about
that's
your
fine.
rights.
That's fine. You can try and do that, but I have the United States government and the judicial branch and law enforcement to support me, right? So you can try.
What if I convince? What if I lie and I convince the cops to come, use force against you, and I violate your rights? You support that, huh? I use the state to violate your rights.
So again, I would collect evidence and then I would go to the judiciary branch in front of a judge, right?
No,
and
but
say,
everybody
"You are
agrees with
bringing
us.
charges
Everybody
against
agrees with
me."
us.
Everybody
agrees with us that
But
we
not
should
everybody
violate
will.
that we should
Not
violate your
everybody will.
rights.
What does it matter, right?
Why are you
You're-
assuming that
you're
in an
coercing.
anarchy?
Hold up. Violating rights in what context? And
We-
like an
we- that
abstract
we should
concept?
we should
And
use
like an abstract concept?
No,
or
no,
like
we should
people are
we
breaking
should
the law
we
as
should
they
we
stand
should
right
No,
now?
I'm
We should use the
violating your
death
rights by
penalty against
making a
you.
lie that you stole from me, or you did something to me, and
Death
I'm
penalty,
calling the
death
cops,
penalty,
and
and
I'm
we should use the
violating
death
your rights.
penalty
All right, I think I'm gonna end the stream tonight. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. Have a great evening and stay out of trouble. Peace.